on right now. So we're gonna start the stream. We got Patrick Council on to talk about the program he's working on tonight. So,
All right. Okay.
all right.
Mm.
Hey, welcome to All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We've got a full show tonight. We're gonna first start off with Patrick Council, our councilman. We'll be talking about a program that he's an event that he is promoting, and it's a good one. And so when he comes on, we'll talk about that. Then right after that, we have. We have on Reverend Conrad Tillard. Reverend Conrad Tillard will be talking about politics as we always talk about it. He always tries to make us see things a little differently, and it's great because you can't get stale in your ideas. Your ideas always have to reflect change. They have to be dynamic, and always good conversations with Reverend Tillard. After that, we have author Ife Williams. She is an amazing researcher, academic. Just put out a book on policing in Philadelphia, and it is a deep look at the historical nature going back to the founding, and how that impacts Philadelphia up to now. That's going to be a rich conversation that we are going to have, and then after that, we have Boshia Burgess, a poet, an international poet, and host of Young Black and Muslimah. She had a recent trip to the Palestinian Territories, and we're going to be talking about that. Yeah, we're talking about those controversial things again and again. We have to be able to have conversations that are important, and we have to be able to know how to have them and have them quite often. There's always going to be pushback, but pushback on the pushback. And at 8:15, we're going to have DJ Rhino and the state of hip hop, and they're going to have some, and of course, let us know about the state of hip hop today. So we've got a full show right now, and we can get started. Now, there's also a program going on tomorrow, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that right before Reverend Tillard. So, in the meantime, it is Patrick Council. Are you on? You good? All right, great. So he is on right now. So, Councilman, how are you? North Councilman, how are you?
How y'all doing, soldiers, man? Good evening, man.
What's good? What's good? What's good?
Good evening.
You brothers, we continue in the struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So there's an event that you were doing that I know that you want to talk about, and we always like having you on. You work hard in the South Ward. You do a lot of things for a lot of people, and this is one of them. So, how are you, and what's going on?
Brother Jonathan, I want to thank you, Brother Zaire. Thank you, man, so much for having me on All Politics Are Local, especially my dear brother Ed, and to all of the viewers out there who continue to struggle. We have the Newark Board of Education, who is looking to continue to work to try to heighten the awareness of our student athletes and provide environments for them that are violence-free. Is hosting a Newark Board of Education basketball showcase classic on December 15th through the 17th at Essex County College. So that's next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, all day with some of the most premier teams in the state of New Jersey, featuring Bergen Catholic, the Patrick School, Payne Tech will be involved, our very own University High School girls, Central High School boys. And so it is going to be a spectacular showcase classic. I think one of the things that I love about it the most is that all proceeds that are raised will go towards scholarships for those student athletes at Newark Board of Education. And so it's something different. The superintendent of the Board of Education wanted folks to begin to think out of the box, become innovative, and host national classics and classics here to showcase the talent that we have in the city of Newark. And I think this is a phenomenal job with so many partners that have, jumped in to be a part of this, from Prudential to our very own city of Newark, Mayor Rajay Baraka, Essex County College, Rise Newark, who is also a part of it, as well as Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, Six Man, Newark Happening. There's so many different partners that are attached to this that's going to make this a fabulous event for community, for families alike. And we're just, asking everybody to come out to participate on next week, December 15th. Games start at 5 p.m. Then next Saturday, games begin at 9:30 a.m. And next Sunday, games begin at 10 a.m. All at Essex County College. We are showcasing the city of Newark, our educational institutions, and the best and bright that we have to offer here in the city of Newark, my brother.
Well, that sounds exciting. So they're bringing in. So it's a national showcase. Question: What makes this showcase like a national showcase?
I think we have teams coming in from St. Francis, Maryland, a girls team, highly renowned. We also have a team coming in from Florida, Lake Minneola, Florida, a girls team who will be battling our University Girls Phoenix on Friday night at 8 o'clock. And
Nice.
So we have teams coming in, not just from the state, but all over the country, man. They're going to be flying in here and going head to head and battling with our young people, and it's a great way to start the holiday season. Season of joy and love, brother.
And it's really a great way for them to really start scrimmaging, because this is like the beginning of the high school basketball season anyway, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So this really allows them to practice against high-level talent. And this is really good for our athletic programs here, because they can go against the best in the country. And the best in the country is coming here to have these basically these specialty games, right? These games of school versus elite school that hopefully will make them all better as the year goes on.
And it's a great kickoff, man.
Yeah, that's coming from somebody who does the same with his debate team, taking them all over the country, battling with some of the best around the country, steel sharpens steel, right? And the Newark is always in the midst of those coming out.
I'm about to say that, brother Zed. Yes, sir. Great minds think alike.
Well, I mean, that's why I liked about the program and the way you were describing it. You were like, no, they're coming from all over the country and they're battling it out right here in the city of Newark. And that allows our teams to go against like some of the best basketball minds as coaches, some of the basketball players, some of the systems that they use, all of that. And there's probably going to be time for socializing from coach to coach, so that they can have some conversations as well. So all of this is really excellent.
Yeah, listen, man, we invited over 62 colleges that will be coming out and attending. We have folks from Delaware State that has already reached back out to us, folks from St. John University. So I think it's a good opportunity that they can showcase their talent in front of these college scouts, that they can be able to, as you said, have an opportunity to go up against some of the best talent around the country. And around the state. We have a battle of Roselle Catholic versus the Patrick School on Sunday. That is a great game. Bergen Catholic versus Payne Tech. That is a great game. Saddlebrook versus Saddlebrook Day will be coming in. We have Old Tappan girls playing Paramus Catholic girls. We have Central High School girls playing St. Francis of Maryland girls. So we have a great lineup of action that's going to take place Friday night, Saturday all day, and Sunday all day. And we want folks to come out and enjoy it, be peaceful, sit down and enjoy 3 days of great action. Listen, the entry fee for adults is $20 a day, and for our students $5. Right? Where else can you find great basketball action like that all day at that price, and knowing that the proceeds are going towards a scholarship for boys and girls basketball athletes in the city of Newark.
Nice. So the proceeds are actually for a charitable cause that will help our athletes in the city of Newark, and we've got some really good programs. So I think this is really good stuff. So, well, how did this get put together? How long does this take to get put together?
Yeah, we've been working on this for over 6 months. Great minds come alike. Our dear brother Ed, who's one of the hosts there, when the superintendent began to have this vision of innovation about, making sure that Newark is the premier space to host classics and events. And he talked about a plethora of different things. I was glad he was able to, pass the baton to me. And I was able to get some partners involved because, folks got to understand none of this work can be done by yourself. We have to have partners. This stuff is a heavy lift. You have to get people involved, and so we went right to Newark Happening, and they stepped right up and hit the road running. and we got other folks involved and brought them to the table. The 6-man organization, and then just a whole bunch of people who got engaged. The Burger organization, Prudential, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, Rise Newark. We began to organize around it, put the format together of what it would look like, and really ventured off to say, how can we benefit the students of the city of Newark? We hosted events. We had a sponsorship party to talk about this event and how valuable it is, not just to the athletes, but what it means for socialization, that our young people get to be able to, after a game, talk to their peers in a different way and share a different light of insight, and providing 3 days of activities that folks can come through to help, decrease the highness of violence that may occur. But it'll be a good opportunity to be able to do that and at the same time keep these numbers down that has been down in the city of Newark. So I just wanted to, be behind that and be in front of it at the same time. So it's good to have good partners to come on and be a part of this. Essex County College stepped up and is a great partner in here as well. And so, kudos to everyone, man, who's a part of this, and especially, to All Politics Are Local, who understand the dynamics of not just having political discourse, but understanding how all of this affects, youth and young adults, and providing, opportunities and activities that can keep them engaged and involved, but at the same time, giving them insight and education. That's what the Panther Party was about. We used to have great parties, right? And they used to stop the party and give excellent information at the same time.
Well, and I appreciate that, man. Thank you for the compliment, and also thank you for sharing what's going on, right? And can you again tell us what the venue is and like where?
Is there a link, Patrick?
Yes, sure. We'll send a link. I had Brother Ed send a link. The venue is Essex County College, the Cleo Hill Gymnasium, the Great Cleo Hill Gymnasium, next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, December 15th, 16th, and 17th. December 15th, Friday night, we kick off at 5 p.m. And December 16th, Saturday, we kick off at 9:30 a.m. With Hillside Girls playing Shabazz Girls. And here's the great thing about that. We have 2 Shabazz girl legends that will be coaching against each other, Janaea Sims and Aaliyah Hanford. So this is what makes it great. Our young people can get back together. They can come back and turn back around. You can't beat that.
I will tell you that took me to another place too, because our sister was a coaching legend too, and we miss her. I'm talking about none other than Shani Baraka.
Yes,
from the Baraka family, right?
Yes,
was a b-ball legend, right? And
as a player and coach.
And coach, that's right. So so the tradition continues.
Yes, sir.
All right. So thank you, and that the flyer, the link, we'll put up so that we can so that people know where to go, and they can be reminded of the entertainment for next weekend. I think that sounds great, right? And a lot more people should be doing stories about that, so that people will go out, see, and it's something that's positive within our city.
Yes, sir.
All right, and we're gonna have to have you back on, man, because you're gonna have to talk about some of the other stuff.
Absolutely. Hey, don't forget, big shout out to Self-Destruction. You remember that hip hop song, Self-Destruction? We had it for Self-Destruction. You remember that, brother Zach?
Yes,
I wanted to throw that in there for y'all today.
No, I appreciate that.
Start off of Malcolm. You got that right.
Yes, sir.
That video.
So, have a great evening, man. Have a great show, man.
You too. Thank you.
Appreciate y'all in the listeners. Take care.
Right, take care.
All right.
Bye-bye. All right, man. So we're gonna do we're gonna announce another program that's going on this week, or actually this weekend, on Ferry Street at Mosque 25 in Newark, and that is One Nation or One Hood Under God, right? Nuri Muhammad is going to be in Newark on Sunday, December 10th, and he'll be giving a lecture, sermon, preaching on 498 Ferry Street in Newark, New Jersey. He asked us to shout out and let people know that is going on. Dynamic speaker of the Nation of Islam, You'll see a lot of his videos. You'll see a lot of his talks and a lot of his analysis. And he's someone who is coming to Newark. He's going to be in Newark on Sunday, December 10th at 11 a.m. And it's going to be church time. You know, it's going to be church. So
last time.
Right. But you know, the nation, they're a mosque, but they do mosque like church, right? They've always had a very like Baptist preacherish kind of appeal all the way through.
Fire and brimstone. Let me tell you something a little about this young brother too, because he's one of the young voices in the Nation of Islam as a part of the emerging young leadership that's coming out of the nation. We're very proud here of Abdul Haq Muhammad. And quite frankly, we think I would say I would hope to see sooner than later that Abdul Haq Muhammad get more national attention. I think he is very deserving of that. But Nuri is from Indianapolis, right? The land where the great Madam C.J. Walker built her economic empire as a master of haircraft, for lack of a better way of putting it. And Nuri was also very good in a very similar way, very much about the economic self-determination that's reflective of the nationalist trend in our tradition. He's done some things along those lines that are very important and exemplary in terms of taking charge of those community spaces that we can own if we dare to own them. Right? So that's who he is. He's a bright young brother.
And that's cool. And that is going to be Sunday at 11 a.m. On 498 Ferry Street in Newark. And the flyers are all out there. And hopefully,
I got to say this too. I think it's just fascinating that Mosque 25 is now on Ferry Street.
Right. Fair enough.
That's a story. I'm waiting to see how that story unfolds.
But let's right, sure. But let's see if our guest is here. Reverend Tillard, are you there? Reverend Tillard?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, I'm gonna pull back.
All right. So
Great. Hey, how are you, brothers?
We are good, man. We are good.
It's
hello.
Wonderful to hear you, brothers, again. Great to hear you.
Always great hearing from you too, man. Always.
Are you driving, Conrad? Are you driving?
I am, but I can hear you, and I got my eye on the road and my mind on you. My mind stayed on you.
Your mind's on the road too, man. Make sure you were safe.
Oh yes.
No casualties.
Thinking that, right? So,
Brother Zaid, don't forget that Indianapolis is also the home of the Big O, Oscar Robertson.
Well enough.
Okay.
Well enough.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we should be going out to Indianapolis probably later this year for a debate tournament. And April. I haven't been. I don't think I've ever been to Indianapolis.
I haven't either. My grandmother spent her last days of grace in Indianapolis. She spent the last 25 years in Indianapolis after coming out of Jersey for all her life. I've never been able to get out there.
So, there's a lot that's going on, right? And I might throw out a topic, but Reverend Tillard, anything you want to talk about, we could talk about. But I've been, I'll throw this out there, right? Well, first, is there anything you want to talk about that's on your mind?
Well, no, I'm observing so many different things. Let's go with what's on your mind, and we'll see what's going on.
All right. So we have been in my class, right? We have this debate going on. I teach a debate class, and I did a curriculum for debate. And one of the things that in one of the units, our second unit, when we're learning certain skills, the topic for that unit is in the United States, resolved in the United States, democracy has failed. And we talk about there are a lot of different ways to take the topic, and there are a lot of different things we can learn. But since it's election year, and since, the Republican debate was last week, and since Trump is probably going to win the nomination, we watched a Frontline documentary called Lies, Politics, and Democracy, right? That features a lot of prominent Republicans talking about the authoritarian danger of Trump, like the unique authoritarian danger of Trump. And there are a lot of Republicans, like there are no Democrats that are or very few Democrats who are interviewed in this. I don't think there are actually any who are political Democrats, like in the House or anything, who are actually interviewed for this. These are all people who work for Trump. These are all people who are Republicans. These are all people who like Liz Cheney. Like these are right wing, like very conservative Republicans who are interviewed for this. And in that, they are really talking about the danger of having someone who can't admit that he loses an election, but yet has the following of like over 20 million people, who many of whom are willing to commit violence on his behalf. I know that you're always like 30%, and we need 30% to vote Republican consistently. In this election coming up, and the reason why you do that, I mean, just throwing it out there, like the reason why you would do that is very reasonable. You think civil rights and interests of Black people should not be a partisan thing, and that at least a certain number of Republicans should always, I mean, a certain number of Black people, right? Even if it's just 30%, need to be in the Republican Party so that they have to take some of our issues seriously. So, question: given all that going on, right? Given what's going on with all these Republicans who think that Trump is actually a danger to democracy itself, do you think 30% of us should vote for him?
Well, first of all, let me say, if you show your students you should always preface it by, can you hear me?
Yes.
I said, first of all, if you show your students a PBS documentary, you should always preface it by saying PBS is a public, it's a very leaning outfit. We'll get an objective perspective. It is coming leaning. People need to stop looking at sources as though they are
you're coming in and out
inherently objective, and that you're getting objective. Okay, all right. In other words, the first thing is we need to start looking at any sources without identifying perspective they're coming from. PBS is not an objective. You'd never get an objective point of view about a Republican or conservative from PBS, because it's, by definition, the Public Broadcasting Corporation. Republicans in Congress have been trying to defund that organization for 30 years. Whether you think that's a good thing or not, that's not the point. The point is they operate from a bias. So that's the first thing. Secondly,
but isn't that isn't that true of every, like what I teach is that
it is, and that's why it is, and that's why I'm saying we should watch all of these things, but we should help young people understand what bias these sources are generally coming from, so that they're at least able to identify. Malcolm was very strict about teaching that. You got to really understand the press and understand from what perspective they're coming from, and then you can objectively watch it and you can come to your own conclusion. That's the first thing. Secondly,
right, just to add on that, just that first thing.
Sure.
One of the things that I teach along those lines is that evidence has to be clear, transparent, and verifiable, so that no matter what source they're looking at, they have to look at evidence and the way that it's presented. Who is it presented by?
Absolutely.
What is the source? Why is the source credible? The source is part of the argument, right?
Absolutely.
They have evidence. Then who are they using as evidence?
Absolutely. And that was my second point. That was my second point. You invalidated that critique of Trump. First of all, I'm not sure Trump will get the nomination. That I don't think that's a foregone conclusion. He's got a lot of legal stuff he has to deal with. But assuming that he does, and whether that's a good thing or bad thing, I let the voters decide that. But when you talk about Liz Cheney, you have to remember, first of all, one of the reasons why those Republicans that you're talking about, the Bushes, the Cheneys, do not like Trump is that Trump beat, first of all, 16 established Republicans in the Republican primary in 2016. He is not a conservative Republican. He despises the permanent government in Washington, D.C., what many call the shadow. Minister Farrakhan called it the shadow government. He calls it the permanent. Republicans and conservatives call it the permanent government. Objectively speaking, it's the permanent, the bureaucratic class that live in places like Bethesda, Maryland, and McLean, Virginia, Fairfax, Virginia. These are unelected bureaucrats that essentially are forming U.S. foreign policy, U.S. public policy. And these people are, when all of the country is suffering economically, they're doing very well because they live on the public dole. That's why the counties around Washington, D.C. are the most affluent in the country. It's because of these folks in government. So they don't like Trump, okay? Because the first thing Trump said was, we're going to get rid of all of this bloated government, all of these people who make their living. Secondly, he despised the neocons, of which Liz Cheney and her father and the Bushes were a part of. And it always astounds me how black people,
but
all of a sudden now
the only pushback on that is Liz Cheney supported Trump, right? She supported him.
Well, no, Liz Cheney never supported Trump.
No,
that whole crowd of she played a role, just like Mitt Romney wanted to be Secretary of State. These people don't like Trump. They never did.
Whether they like or not, like she led his defense in the first impeachment hearing.
Well, you know what? She did that because that was politically expedient. The bottom line is, not one U.S. soldier or very few died under Donald Trump. He said he came in office. He said he despised, and we have to get out of these permanent wars. There were no wars under Trump, okay? Under Liz Cheney's father, millions of people were displaced, died, and were injured. So who's a more credible source? As far as I'm concerned, Liz Cheney has no credibility. She and her father
on every issue. Like I'm not saying I agree with her.
She has absolutely no credibility.
99% of the time, I will not agree with Liz.
Yeah,
Cheney.
I know, but that's the problem. That's the problem. You agree with her no time except when she's critical of Trump. And my point is, that doesn't make her credible. All of these people.
I think that here's the thing, right? Like, if we're dealing with evidence, right, and there's really only one thing that, in terms of evidence, and my concern, and what she articulated as her concern, is that he refused to admit that he lost the election and stoked.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you this question: is he the only politician that ever refused to admit they lost an election? Didn't Stacey Abrams refuse to admit that she lost the election in Georgia? I mean, why is that a big deal?
Because
in other words, let me finish this point. In other words, all of the people, these Chicken Little, the sky is falling, democracy is at stake. How come, if the democracy is at stake, did he leave office on the day he was supposed to? Was Joe Biden sworn in? Didn't we have a peaceful transfer of power?
No, we did not have a peaceful transfer of power.
That's absurd. That's absolutely absurd. January 6th did not interfere at all. It had nothing to do with the peaceful transfer of power. That took place. That took place
after a delay. After many people ran for their lives.
There was no delay. It went on as scheduled.
No,
there were no soldiers in the Capitol. It took place outside in the Capitol the way it always does. So,
no, man, they left the Capitol. They came back later that evening after, like, the police and National Guard came and cleared out the Capitol.
Okay,
what are you talking about?
Let me just
plan. There was no violence.
Let me just say this.
You're rewriting.
I do not share. I do not share the view that what I consider pure political posturing of Democratic politicians that democracy is at stake.
Well, I mean, that's why.
Democracy is at stake when people like Dick Cheney go before the American people and send Colin Powell before the American people and lie and say that Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction when they know that he did not. Democracy is at stake when we undermine foreign governments, as Obama did with Gaddafi in Libya, as we have done historically. That then democracy is at stake. I'm not going to join the chorus.
I'm not going to disagree with your criticisms of Liz Cheney or the Republican Party.
So as far as I'm concerned, she has no credibility.
Wait, stop. All I'm asking is this: did Trump affect a peaceful? Do you think 1/6 was a peaceful transition of power?
First of all, again, the courts will decide his culpability for.
I'm just saying, was it peaceful?
But that has nothing to do with a peaceful transfer of power. People in America exercise the right to protest all the time. Sometimes they do it violently. After George Floyd was killed, Black folks and young people tore up and burnt up some cities, and where those excesses where people were prosecuted. That's a part of the American tradition of government. I'm sure Baba Zaid was somewhere out in the streets of Newark in '67 when Black folks rose up and raised hell and burnt up Newark. So I mean, we can't act as though you can't defend Los Angeles, and you can't call Los Angeles in 1992 a rebellion and then act like you have no stomach for January 6th as though
I'm not saying, but just call it what it was, right?
I mean, it has nothing to do with our having a peaceful transfer of power, in spite of all the doomsday prophets. I'm confident that our system, the democracy, is this system, the governmental system that we have, which has 3 branches of government, has proven through the last presidential election that the system is strong. This is no more than a Democratic talking point to enliven the base, to get people out to vote. And what it does is what it always does, because it's always the same story. You say, I know you say blacks should be 30% Republicans, but in this election, then, a few years ago when Mitt Romney was running, this lovely fellow that everybody's supposed to love now, and this paragon of virtue, then it was, we got to get out. In this election, he's talking about the 1%, and those people. So I'm just saying, my dear brother,
you don't think there's any difference between?
No, I don't.
Like the opposing Mitt Romney and
I absolutely do not.
And the way people were like, yes, it's important. We disagree with him, and here are specific issues. It seemed like with Mitt Romney, there were specific issues, right? Like there was issues of affirmative action, taxes, social programs being cut, right? Like there were certain issues, right, that were talked about, but it wasn't like an existential threat. And that up
for Black people, right? For Black people who want to stay comfortably on the Democratic plantation, and for the people who are paid in our community to create this kind of anxiety among our people, the Roland Martins and people who play that role. They never have an intelligent discourse with our people about the political system. It's through fear that they seek to motivate Blacks to vote. And you never, ever really, you always have an overwhelming majority of Blacks who don't vote. And, and it's because, the Black community is an intelligent community. If we simply would teach people of the governmental system, teach them how it works, then we would not have to resort to fear tactics, because the average Black person is saying, listen, my life didn't change when Obama was in. So and my life didn't change when Trump was in. So when you talk about an existential threat to some brother in Newark, if Trump gets in office, he's going to tune you out, because he already knows that there's no more existential threat to his life if Trump is elected than if Biden is elected. And they know that. And so therefore, what we need to do is try something we've never done. And that's to actually teach people about the political process and why we need people in both parties. If 30% of blacks were in the Republican Party and they didn't want Trump as the nominee, that 30% leverage in that party could probably deny him the nomination. So I haven't changed. My intelligent prescription of 70-30 doesn't change. There's never a reason to change. We have a two-party system, and black people need to be represented in both parties. I mean, you guys, are you going to say to the Muslim community is watching Biden's very one-sided position in the Middle East? They're not going to likely tell their people, well, we got to vote for Biden either way. They're not going to do that. And as I've said before, gays don't do it. They have a split in their vote. Women, Latinos, it's only blacks. So unless there's a unique reason every election for blacks to vote 98% for the Democratic Party, I think we've been hoodwinked, we have been deceived, and we continue to deceive our people. And I just don't buy into the hysteria.
So what you're saying is that, like, when Kanye and I forgot her name, his former wife, came and actually Kim Kardashian did actual serious lobbying for multiple people who had, like, I think it was thousands of people who had been incarcerated on pumped up drug charges. There was the first the Second Chance Act, I believe it was called.
Right. Some of them weren't trumped up, right?
Right. So, but they were generally nonviolent drug offenses,
right?
Or drug offenses where it was like,
right,
exactly,
or they had served a lot of time.
Right. They had served like 10 years or 15 years for drug charges, right? Like that clearly were unfair. And
I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh, it's okay. I mean, it is. I think it was called the Second Chance Act.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think it was the Second Chance Act, where a lot of people were released from prison, and that was
and Trump did that. People like Kwame Kilpatrick, who the Democrats in Michigan, because he was a strong, sometimes arrogant young black politician, they sentenced him to 28 years in prison in Detroit for basically political corruption that others get a smack on the wrist for. So I'm saying, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, that you can yield from both parties, and we have to be about the business of yielding from both parties the interest of African American people. And I don't ever believe, first of all, democracy is not at stake. This is a leftist talking point.
I know we're getting ready to wrap up this side. So of course, we're going to continue, right? Because we do disagree, right? But I do think it's important that you make your point heard, right? Like, because we're going to get into it again. But to wrap up, what you're saying?
Well, I'm just saying that as Black people, we truly have to learn what the Constitution is. We've got to learn how our political system works. And once we do that, it's like, Jesse Jackson used to say, when the court is 90 feet, both baskets are 10 feet, the rules are applied equally, we always excel. At one time, we didn't play tennis. Richard Williams taught his daughters tennis, and we became the greatest. Tiger Woods, Earl, taught his son golf, and we became the greatest. Once we learn the rules, once we understand the political process, we will prosper. We've done it in the past, but the one thing we've never really understood is that we live in a two-party system, and you cannot yield from a two-party system. Benjamin Netanyahu does not have a two-party system in Israel. That's why people don't understand, but he has to string together a coalition sometimes of 33 parties. They have a parliamentary system. Britain has a different system. France has a different system. So once you understand our system, then we can effectively play it. And when you line up 98% of your people in one party, you clearly do not understand the U.S. political system. And I think that's to our detriment.
Well, we are going to continue to have this conversation.
God bless you and God keep you.
No, man, and thank you for coming back on as always, because I think that it's important that even though we disagree, that like hearing the warrants of arguments, hearing the impact of arguments, hearing a lot of things, you realize that like even though you disagree with a particular side, there's legitimacy in what people are saying, at least to some extent, right? These debates are important to have. So I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you being patient and us being able to have this back and forth.
All right, my brothers. Take care. Have a good evening.
All right, you too.
All right.
Our next guest is an amazing writer and academic, and we are honored. I've never met this person before, but the work that she does, it is incredibly important. Dr. Ife Williams wrote a book called Police Brutality, a Philadelphia Story, Policing Perspectives and Challenges in the 21st Century. It is a thoughtful, it is, I have not read all of it. I'm getting into it, and it is a thoughtful understanding of police brutality that seems to go from slavery to now specifically talking about Philadelphia and what's going on. So it's one that I am honored to have you on to talk about it, because I think that these things are just incredibly important. So thank you.
Let me add to the introduction in this way, Jonathan. I got to do this. And Ife, good to see you, my queen. We really appreciate the work. And I'm going to introduce this because this weekend, tomorrow, is the anniversary of one Mumia Abu Jamal being shot, arrested, damn near killed, and now going into his 42nd year in prison. But a very young Wesley Cook went to a rally for George Wallace. Your friend was just talking about conservatives and whatnot, but once upon a time there was a crazy, rabid former governor. Segregation today, segregation tomorrow.
Segregation now, segregation forever. Right.
George Wallace, that's Representative Beachhead for segregation in Alabama, running for president in 1968, had a big rally in Philadelphia. And some young brothers really just, as we say, just kind of bugging out, want to see what's going on. These folks coming to Philly for this crazy white man and whatnot. One of them was a young brother named Wesley Cook, and they just couldn't deal with it. So they decided to interrupt in a very juvenile way. And in the middle of them rallying and roaring on this arch segregationist, they said, "Ooh, Ngawa, Black Power, yeah," and got their behinds beat. And when the police came to break the wild white folks off of these young brothers, and Wesley Cook being Mumia Abu Jamal when he was 14, he's reaching for the police to thank him for getting the white folks off of him. The police kicked him right in the face and kicked him into the Black Panther Party. So it's fascinating that in the town of brotherly love, as it's so hyped, a democratic town too, by the way, we have this problem with police brutality. Is that real, Sister Ife? I mean, we talk about the same Philadelphia.
Yes, we are.
Tell us about it, because you got it.
And Mumia thanked him for that kick.
That's right.
Yeah, he said he thanked him. So thank you, Brother Austin, for having me on that.
No, thank you.
Thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate this.
No, thank you for coming on. And it is my fault that we did not have you on earlier, because we need to have you on a lot more. So thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thank you. Well, I was thinking today how to really sum up the book. Philadelphia, to me, I am a Philadelphian, so I do have a little bias here, but I believe I know that Philadelphia is really unique in terms of its history with the police. Very unique. Not only had we had Rizzo, as Brother Muhammad was getting ready to allude to, and in Mumia's case,
Right.
but we also had Move.
Right.
And this was only the second. Go ahead.
I was going to say for our audience, they may or may not know that in the 1980s, that a literal bomb was dropped on the house.
May 13th, 1985, Osage Avenue.
A bomb was dropped on a house with activists in it, including their children, right? And the level of disrespect for human life was just so profound. And I have questions about that too, but that's just for the audience to know the basic, like literally a city, a police force, a mayor Good, I believe his name was.
Yeah, we had a black mayor at the time.
And he dropped a bomb on a house with kids in it, with activists in it, because and you were saying, I just wanted to put that part about the bomb out there when you're talking about Move, and you're talking about an activist organization that was targeted by the police and where they literally murdered families.
Yeah, 12 people. Yes, this was only the second aerial bombing in the history of the United States. The first being Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921.
That's right. Destruction of Black Wall Street.
Right. Under a black mayor.
Undone under air cover, May 31st and June 1st, 1921. Go ahead, sister. Proceed.
Yep.
And you know who his advisor was? Daryl Gates from Los Angeles.
Wow.
The founder of SWAT.
And SWAT teams were developed as a counterinsurgency tool to attack the Black Panther Party.
Right there in LA. Yep. And he congratulated the mayor, said the mayor did a fine job. But since then, Wilson Goode has found the Lord. And he regrets what happens, because after it happened, he said that he took responsibility for the whole thing, and he said he would do it again.
He sure did.
And they characterized the children, all under the age of 14, as terrorists.
Wow.
Yeah.
Doesn't that sound familiar?
But since then, he has said that he's sorry. He regrets the action. And he recommended reparations for the surviving Move members, but only one is really alive, is Ramona, and she's very ill. That's what I heard.
Now, when you're saying Philadelphia was unique, right?
Yeah.
And so with Move and with was Move a part of why Philadelphia is unique? Can you explain more about that?
Yes, Move is a very large part of why Philadelphia is unique, because what the theory that I use in the book is what I call predacious policing, where the police actually instigate situations where they can use whatever force they want to. And Move becomes a very good example. This was a Back to Nature group that started. As a matter of fact, their first protest was at the Philadelphia Zoo. They were protesting the caging of animals. They would be right on it in terms of global warming and the environment. But what happens is the police criminalized them. They started surveillance and just harassing them, arresting them over and over again. And Move members are very unique. They have what my mother would call potty mouths. They like to use a lot of profanity. So what the city did, the police did, was they had profanity ruled as illegal, as a way to arrest Move members. And they were arrested between 150 and 500 times. So what the Philadelphia police was trying to do was bankrupt the group out of existence. And then there was a turning point in 1976. What happened was a MOVE member was released from prison. He came home and they were celebrating in the yard, and the police just attacked him, attacked the house. And in that, a baby was killed, baby life. And after that, it was downhill. That's when MOVE began arming themselves. And everything they did was constitutional. They never really broke the law. There was never a law broken. And what the city wanted to do was to issue a warrant, what they call John Doe warrants for the MOVE members, because they would not allow license and inspections to come onto the property to inspect. That was all they had. And of course, it didn't go well. And during the melee, a police officer was killed, Officer Ramp. And at first, the coroner said that the bullet entered his back and exited his chest, that it was friendly fire. But by the time MOVE got to court, they said MOVE shot him. Mind you, they were in the basement of the house with deluge guns, with water going into the basement. There was no way they could shoot him. And then the entire house was destroyed, so there was no evidence. Their hands were never checked for any gunpowder residue. And 9 members of MOVE were convicted for murder and sentenced to 40 years. And the judge said, Judge Malma said, they wanted to be tried as a family. I'm going to convict them as a family. That's right. And the judge admitted, he said, I don't know who shot James Ross.
That's right.
Wow.
I don't know. Yeah, but they still got and the only way they could get parole or get out was to disassociate with MOVE, and they wouldn't do it. Mm-hmm.
No, and we lost 2 in prison. Phil Africa and Merle Africa both died in prison.
They died. And then Delbert died shortly after being released. Go ahead, Brother Austin.
I was going to ask, it seems like there are reasons why you're saying this. Like, it seems like the way that you talked about this predacious policing, it's like the people are the crime. Like the crime isn't in the act they committed, right? Because the reason for the escalation, the reason for the intense police both scrutiny and when they tried to invade the house, right? The reason for the ramp up in violence is one-sided. I think that you're suggesting that this is something that dates back to slavery, that is in the way that we are seen. What is unique about, is Philadelphia just the epitome of that we're not human, that we are the crime? Like what is the theory, and why is that theory unique for Philadelphia, right? Like, is it that Philadelphia is the epitome example of it, or is that is Philadelphia different, right? Like in the way that we are seen and policed, is predacious policing, is that something that started, like what is the unique part about Philadelphia? Because like when you talk about, like, you know, the way in which we are seen, the way in which we're policed all over the country, it's like we're the crime, right? As Black people, we're the crime. Is the argument that Philadelphia is uniquely extreme because, like, they were hippies, right? They murdered a hippie, they dropped bombs on hippies, right? Who cursed them out, who hurt their feelings. What is that uniqueness there?
Mm-hmm. Well, what I was looking at, I felt like I really did not need to prove that police brutality existed. Kind of, we all already knew that. What I was looking at was redress against police brutality. What do we have to bring these police officers into line? And what makes Philadelphia unique to me is that we have a long history of protesting what the police were doing and trying to make the police accountable. That's what I'm looking at. So yes, I go back to slavery, and I only go back to slavery to really make one point, is because when people think about slavery, they think about Philadelphia, I always think about the Quakers. Oh, the Quakers were there. Black people didn't have any problems. No, the Quakers were the first to purchase African people. But
wow.
I move up. There were a number of riots in Philadelphia, mostly between the different ethnic groups, but they always attacked Black people. But what became a turning point was in 1918, there was a riot here when a Black neighborhood was attacked. And of course, the Black people were arrested. They weren't allowed to get guns. The police even went into the homes of some of the Black people and took their guns. But what was really significant was after that riot, the Black people got together and they formed an association called the Colored Protective Association. And they actually issued cards to their members to show the police. So when the police stopped them and hassled them, they said, look, we have the backing of the CPA, right? And they actually took officers to court. One of the officers during the riot had beat up a man, beat him so bad they had to take him to the hospital. And while he was in the hospital, the officers jumped up on the gurney and started beating him again. And a Black officer had to pull him off. And so that was one of their first cases. But when they got to court, the Black officer said he didn't see anything. So they threw the case out. So I'm just showing that by the time we get to the 60s, we have over 22 groups that focus on police accountability alone. Okay. And that's in addition to your Black Panthers, RAM, the Revolutionary Action Movement, who Rizzo really hated the most. We had SNCC, we had SCLC. Philadelphia had the largest membership of the NAACP in this country. Right. And they all had police brutality on their agenda. We also had a Black newspaper, the Philadelphia Tribune, that brutality was so bad that they mentioned it in their masthead, that we're fighting against police brutality, right?
One of the
so
oldest
you have
Black newspapers in the country.
You have a plethora of activity of civic organizations trying to hold these officers accountable, and actually get worse. And I know Brother Muhammad would say, you all remember the Black Panthers when they were arrested, when their house was raided, and they all had to strip outside, had to lower their pants.
The Constitutional Convention took place anyway.
Right. And that was another major turning point, because that's when those 22 organizations that I mentioned pulled together and they took the city to court. And what they wanted to do was to get an injunction against police brutality. All right. And this is where the significance of Philadelphia comes in, because we have two major federal cases dealing with police brutality. We set the bar in this city. And what the court rules is that you don't really have any right to be protected from the police. That police brutality is not a constitutional violation. So going back to predacious policing, the reason we do not get the type of convictions that we want from the police is because they're doing what they can within the confines of the law. They can do that. It's only if you violate a person to the point where, and then of course you have to prove that, you have to have witnesses or broken teeth or actually killing them, then the court will step in. But you can't get an injunction to stop the police, right? So in this case, this case went to the Supreme Court, Rizzo v. Good, and the court, the federal court here in Philadelphia, they admitted, they said that the police force was racist. Well, let me stop. They didn't say racist. They said the police had a racial bias, and that's the court said it. Okay, and they said that they had a faulty system of holding officers accountable. Right. And the court in Philadelphia issued the injunction, and the city agreed to it. The police, the city, and the community agreed. They came up with a number of requisites of what the police institution should do. The Supreme Court overruled. And it's such a shame. They really did. They overruled. And so even after everybody agreed on this, go ahead.
What year was this?
What cases? What's the name of the case and what year was that?
This is Rizzo v. Good, 1976.
Okay.
The Supreme Court case.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And see, the first Supreme Court case we had was 1945. That was a Screws case. That set the precedent. You know how in all these cases against the police, they say you have to prove willful intent. You have to prove that the officer intended to take away your constitutional rights. Okay. That was set up in the Screws case. Okay. And it's 1945. Sheriff beats a black man to death. Okay. And it goes to court. And this is what's so amazing. Yeah, by accident on purpose. And actually, people heard the sheriff tell Robert Hall, "I'm going to get you, boy." They heard him. And then the sheriff went to the bar and started talking about how Hall disrespected him and that boy needs to be taught a lesson. So how much more do you need for intent? An all-white jury, this is the most amazing part, an all-white jury in 1945, rural Georgia, right, found Officer Screws guilty. Guilty, wow. Not a man. Yeah, isn't that amazing? Not a manslaughter, but of depriving Hall of his constitutional rights. Mm-hmm. So he appealed, and that case went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court reversed.
Wow. And the basis for the reversal was
willful intent.
Mm-hmm. So you had to, in order to prove it, you have to mind read.
You have to prove that the officer. And see, people, let me just jump in here for a second, because when you're talking about police brutality and trying to make accountable policing something real, it's not just the abuse of the police itself as an institution. It's how the institution has been protected, right? And here is an illustration of how the courts have upheld white supremacy and police brutality by using this high bar to prove that is this whole question of willful intent. Thank you for giving that and breaking that down for us.
You're absolutely right. So the police they're just following the law, and the Supreme Court has inserted itself into this whole issue of police brutality because of the Fourth Amendment. Okay, protection from search and seizure. So they have become the arbiter of what police brutality is. And in every instance, they have protected the police. And poor Thurgood Marshall, oh my God. Even in the Rizzo case, he says, look, you're not looking at the institution of policing. We're doing the bad apple thing. It's one bad officer. Right? A rogue officer. No, it's not just a rogue officer. It's institutional racism we have to look at.
That's right.
And Marshall said, you're not even looking at that. You're not looking at the practices of the police. For example, when a police officer stops you and asks you for information and you may be out to step out your car or whatever, none of that is protected. Your rights, our rights are not protected until we are detained. And the irony is, and Thurgood Marshall pointed it out, 99.9% of all deaths from the police happened during that initial encounter. You see that?
That's right.
But the Supreme Court, I don't know. Do you remember, the audience may not, but remember Richard Pryor used to say that the black people and white people have different relationships with the police. That when the white person gets stopped by the police, they're like, "Oh, hi, Officer Friendly, how you doing? How's your family?" And I think this is the mindset of the court, But when a black person gets stopped, it's like, I am reaching for my wallet. I do not want to be in an accident. We have totally different realities, right? But and I'm not even going to start on Clarence Thomas. You know, I mean, he even said he thinks the police are doing a
Jenny's
fine
boy.
job. He does not think that.
Ain't that Jenny Thomas's husband?
Yeah,
The one that got all the money and taking all the money and
Now what did he say?
Go ahead. Repeat what he said.
Oh yeah. One case of egregious police behavior. This shooting a car. They stopped the car, and of course, as they was getting out, the car pulled off. They chased the car and start shooting it in the car, kill everybody in the car. Right? It wasn't even a traffic violation, and the court upheld it. And that's the case where Thomas said that he really didn't see any egregious behavior. He saw what good police work, you know. So I think, you know, when we look at the police, again, we have to get away. What'd you say?
No, I said basically an execution was good police work.
Yeah. But we have to get away from this bad apple thing and this whole thing about justifiable homicide. You know, because then it makes it look like what the police did was legitimate. Well, look at the person that they killed. You know, what was he trying to do? Well, got a pack of cigarettes. What can I say? And look at the institution of policing. So that's what I do in the book, Police Brutality, a Philadelphia Story. I show how I look at the institution, the Philadelphia police as an institution. And not only that, I look at the personalities. You know, Brother Muhammad mentioned the rally with Mumia. The police knew about Mumia right when he was 14 years old.
Right.
Mumia was one of the founders of the Black Panther Party.
Right.
And under Rizzo, he started getting files on all the so-called, not only, you mentioned hippies, you know, not only the Black activists, but the hippies too. He had over 18,000 files on people. On Mumia alone, he had over 800 pages. So they knew exact. So 1981, let's come up to the day that, as you mentioned, this day tomorrow, we'll commemorate when Mumia was stopped. When the police went to the site where the officer was killed and Mumia was sitting there, they knew exactly who Mumia was, exactly who they was. And even Mumia said their biggest crime was not killing him that night. Even the police say that. You know, they said we should have just killed him that night. They tried. They beat him bad before they took him in. But that case, I mean, even conservative criminal justice people say that Mumia is just an exception to the rule. I mean, every case that even the court ruled of things that you can't do, like an all-white jury or holding previous association, because of course they brought up his association with the Black Panthers. That's all unconstitutional. You can't do that, but they did it.
And review after review just seems to ignore that. Is like, I'm gonna ask an obvious question, but maybe not obvious question. Do you think that it is unique to the institution of Philadelphia that, and because you could list them out, and I want you to list out some of those things that are Mumia the exception. Like, what do you mean by that? And is that, like, what do you mean by Mumia is the exception to the rule? And how is that uniquely Philadelphia? Is that part of that Philadelphia police story?
Well, I think so. And also it's kind of bigger than Mumia. It was what we see with MOVE. The Constitution did not apply to MOVE or Mumia. None of our rights, everything was thrown out the window. They didn't take that. MOVE members were beaten in the courtroom in front of the judges. They were tried in absentia. In one case, Delbert Africa was sitting in the hallway outside the courtroom. He could have just stepped in and was sentenced. You know, and everybody's looking like the American Civil Liberties Union is like, you can't do that, but they did it. And you're talking about exorbitant fines. oh man, $25,000 for each count of contempt. In one case, they had over, Delbert had over four counts of contempt in one case. So then as you get, and this is where Mumia comes in, because remember, Mumia was a reporter, and he started out just reporting. He was actually on a police beat, which he didn't like, but that's where he was assigned. But he started covering the police case, and especially after what happened with Officer Ramp. And I know I digress, but I'm going to come back to this again. Redress against police brutality. When in '78, when Delbert Africa surrendered after the killing of James Ramp, he was beaten by 3 police officers. So now we have video cameras. Now everybody's talking about cell phones. No, the news cameras caught this. Everybody saw this. It
was a national spectacle.
Right. And it took over a year before those police officers were brought to trial. Right. I mean, they wouldn't even FOP, they still don't do. They won't release the name unless they have to. They give a certain amount of time. But anyway, they go to court, and that's where I come in. I'm looking at what type of redress do we have? Same thing. Well, they couldn't get an all-white jury. First, they tried to move the case out of the city. So this is uniquely Philadelphia. What they did was they bust in a group of white people 200 miles from Philadelphia, from Dauphin County, into the city. Yes. They bust them in. And then, of course, you had the trial, and you had the police officers crying and talking about how upset they were. And then you brought Delbert Africa in. You know what was going to happen. They had them all chained down, and he's yelling at the judge. And so the judge stopped the case. Another unique thing, that he stopped the case, and he says, and commemorate and congratulated the officers on their bravery, right? And said there's no charges against them. Now go to 1985 with the bombing, right? The police were able to get whatever guns they wanted to. Anyway, even the police chief said, I did think that the officers were a little more equipped than they should have been. But anyway, the MOVE members were trying to get out of the house. Well, the police are shooting in the front of the house. So they're trying to go out the back. Who is in the back alley with guns pointing at them? Remember those 3 officers? Mm-hmm. It was the same 3 officers. It was 2 of them, Zagami and Mofa. It was 2 of the officers who were tried for beating up Delbert. Do you think they had a little resentment there? And even Ramona said they were shooting at, and even when they got the bodies out, they found that they were killed by
gunfire.
Buckshot.
That's right.
Right. Yeah, and it was those same officers. So also I'm showing the continuity.
It's a planned style attack.
Well, the police commissioner said, well, you didn't ask me to handpick the officers. Are you kidding me? Why would you have them do that? But so that's the uniqueness there. So Mumia kind of gets involved in this whole MOVE thing. And one of the officers said, even though they knew who Mumia was in '81, they said he looks like one of the MOVE people. So you had these officers who already had this 55-day shutdown with MOVE. And it was, even though they made tons of money in overtime, one officer even bought a boat named Delbert. But yeah. So you see the continuity here. But they knew who he was from the beginning. And that case, you don't even have to be a lawyer to see the holes in that case. You just look at it, and that's when we talk about he's the exception. I mean, people look at it and people are amazed.
Lynn Washington.
The judge in the case. Yeah. Oh, and again, going back to my major thesis about what type of redress we have, what I do with the Mumia chapter is I counterpose that to the Fraternal Order Police. Because what I argue is our major challenges to ending police brutality is the Supreme Court and the Fraternal Order Police.
Mm.
And I just go to show how far they went and are still going in Mumia's case. There was, when they finally arrested Mumia, FOP sent a message to the judge asking the judge to give a high bail or whatever. And of course, they denied it. Then the judge that he was assigned, they thought was too lenient. They gave his case to another judge. They moved it to Judge Sabo, who was the death penalty king. He's put more people on death row than any judge in this nation. Also, he's had more people removed from death row than any other judge.
Mm.
And he was a lifetime member of the Fraternal Order Police.
Wow. Okay.
And every time Mumia's case was appealed in Pennsylvania, for some reason, they give you, well, I know what the reason is. It doesn't make sense. They give you the same judge. So he came up against this judge over and over again. And this is one last little time.
Got to see him up close in person too, because we packed the court for that, so folks could see that for what he is.
Sabo, So look, go back. Remember I was telling you about the Rizzo v. Good case?
Right.
And I told you it was 22 organizations that initiated that case. One of the organizations was called PillCop. They were a group of Philadelphia lawyers. And at the time, the head of it was Anthony Jackson. Now jump up some years to Mumia's case.
Yeah.
Who is appointed to Mumia?
Anthony
Someone who hadn't even been in the courtroom for ages.
It said from the Lord that I am not the person to be handling this case. I don't have the background or the resources to handle this case. Tried to get himself recused from it, and they wouldn't.
Nope.
Wow.
Nope. It's the same person. You know, it's like, this is more than a coincidence. You see, I think the Philadelphia police, they're vengeful, and they don't forget. And, you know, and these people are still around. Well, a lot of them have retired, but when we get to 1985 and the bombing of Move, most of those officers were there. 78. One of the officers who was involved in, in 78 was the one who was head of the raid on the Black Panthers.
That's right.
Hmm.
Giordano. It was the same officer. Same one. And so these officers, of course, are training other ones that come. So you got all this institutional stuff.
So is there an? It seems like there. It seems like the argument is there is no remedy so long as these institutions remain institutions.
Well, I mean, but you got to have hope. I mean, we didn't have any hope. We'd still be on a plantation picking cotton. There are remedies. Our justice system, and everybody's saying that. You know, it's not just the so-called liberals, it's conservatives. Our justice system is not about justice. It's all about retribution. It's about punishment. You know, it's racially biased. And of course, the police are a big part of that. And the way I end is, you know, sometimes we look at police brutality as that instance in the street when that person loses their life. However, police brutality begins there and goes all the way up through death row, the whole institution. Well, the police are an integral part of what is going on in our system. So yeah, the system really, really needs to be reformed. And there are people out there, there are criminal civil rights lawyers, there are different organizations trying to educate the public. And see, this is the thing with Black people, this is a big problem that we had and still have. I mean, we can go back to Du Bois. We are victimized by crime, but we're also victimized by the police.
Right.
You know? And Black people have a high regard for ourselves as individuals, but when it comes to our people, we don't have that same high regard. You know? So we're caught in the middle. Did they really commit the crime? Maybe they are. You know, that's why we have to get away from this justifiable homicide type of argument. You know, well, they do look like criminals. And you go all the way back when Ida B. Wells and Walter White were investigating those lynching cases. What were they doing? They knew right off that the person didn't do what they were accused of, but they had to go through a whole process. Well, you know, maybe they did. Let's look at this. So we're still caught in that.
Wait, can you explain that again? Like, because when you're talking about Walter White and Ida B. Wells, they were investigating lynchings throughout the South, and right. I don't think a lot of our audience understands the implications of what you said. Like they were investigating like lynchings, right? Like we know that white people stringing Black people up and like straight murder that is accepted by the town. They would have picnics. They would have little town gatherings and celebrations. They would. When I was in college, that I read in the African American Cultural Center, they had the early issues of the NAACP publication Crisis, and in every episode they had a place on crime, right? And I was like, crime, and when I would read it, they would be describing lynchings, right? And it was just, they would shoot a body so many times as the body would split up. They would burn a body up and take parts of the body and put it in jars for souvenirs, right? So when you're talking about Ida B. Wells, Walter White, what they were investigating like lynchings. They would accuse a Black man of raping a white woman, and he would be strung up, or they would lynch women. They would they had these. So what you're talking about is this egregious, blatant violence that was meted on Black people that had nothing to do with law, had everything to do with just mob rule. You were just taken and murdered. And you're saying what with Ida B. Wells and Walter White and this like level of justifiable homicide? Because you said it very quickly, but then I was like, "Whoa, let's slow this down," because I think that the audience
slow down a little bit
of what you're saying.
There's a really good book that I use, Brother Muhammad. It's called the just left me. I'm sorry, to come back to me in a minute. The Condemnation of Blackness. Condemnation of Blackness.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Right. And the thesis there is that Black people were criminalized. But even before Kilbride comes up with this thesis, we can go all the way back to African Heritage Studies Association and some of the early work they were doing on the criminalization of the Black race. So it was seen early in the 1900s, let me stop, during slavery, that Black people were inherently criminal. It was part of our DNA that made us criminal. And this led to a lot of studies where they would take the skulls of Black people and examine them and their blood, just said that they were criminal. So as we get into the 1900s, then the theory kind of changes a little bit. Say, okay, well, maybe it's not their DNA, but it's their culture. Very good. Yeah, Khalil Muhammad. It's their culture that's making them criminal. All right. So what happens is Black scholars of the time, and that's why I looked at Walter White, Ida B. Wells, Du Bois, they're caught in this argument. Well, are Black people culturally criminal? Right? And sometimes when they would try to make arguments against that thesis, they wound up supporting it.
Wow.
And this is what, so my estimation, I'm like, Ida, you know that man did not do what they're accusing him of. But she always went, and Walter White, with the idea of, well, let's investigate, let's talk to him, let's see if this really happened. It didn't happen. All right.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. That's what we're caught in today as a people. It's very it's just like with prison. Go ahead.
So
well,
is it
with prisoners and mass incarceration, we can't get Black people together to oppose this system of mass incarceration and criminal justice and police brutality, because they're like, well, did they really do it?
So part of it is, this is inhumane treatment. This is, and it seems like what you're saying is part of our thinking is that we are like, do people who look like us, do they deserve the treatment that is dehumanizing? Yes. Do they deserve to be dehumanized? Do they deserve to be murdered? Do they deserve to be, like, because you're putting, I thought what you did was brilliant in that you were talking about our heroes, right? Walter White, hero, Black community, and Ida B. Wells, hero, right? Like, in terms of facing what they faced to do what they did. But you're like, but in all of it, it's kind of like, we have to prove our humanity. We have to prove that we're human. We are deserving of humane treatment. And you put that with, you tied lynching with prison, with other forms of clearly inhumane treatment. Like, when when there are actual jokes about prison rape and the way in which we incarcerate people, the way in which we treat people, right? Then even any acceptance of that seems to be an acceptance of our dehumanization. But we're like, but some of them deserve to be. It is that the conundrum you're talking about that we need to move beyond?
Yeah, and we're still there. So, we just had an election. We just got our first woman mayor, and she ran on a law and order platform. And wait a minute, all the little progress that we've made, she's taking us back. She wants to restore, search and frisk, and she wants to reinstitute it. So
is she running for vice president? Is she running for vice president?
No, I hope not. Okay. But but this is what we're faced with, as Black, and then this ties into the significance and power of Mumia, because here we have someone who is very educated, very literate, an excellent writer, who is incarcerated, and for the first time, he's telling us what is going on behind those walls. And it's trying to shut him down. But look at all the people all the Black and brown people in this country who are incarcerated. We don't know what's going on.
From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu Jamal. We're still getting those commentaries from Prison Radio. Absolutely.
I know we are getting near the end of this segment. But I do want to ask one more, like, in terms of wrapping this up, in terms of a conclusion. You started off by saying that we should always have hope, but I don't know what that looks like in this context. Like, I'm
gonna tell you what it looks like. Wait a minute, hold up.
Okay.
Hold up, goddammit. I'm gonna tell you what it looks like.
Just saying, right?
It looks like the summer of 2020, when the United States had its largest protest summer in the history of this country.
It's true.
All up and down, north, south, east, west, Black, brown, and white protesting police brutality. A whole lot of young folks, a whole lot of young women, in the leadership. We got a lot of hope to build on.
Yeah, and we really can't underestimate.
Am I right? How many mentees you got out there that was in them streets?
We can't underestimate the power of the Black Lives Matter movement. They have really instigated a lot of change across this country. However, because of I was listening to the speaker before, so we got to know about the American system so we can turn it around. But because of certain people in our legislature, a lot of those reforms have been stalled.
Right.
Yeah. We got a crew in Jersey. They don't call it the Soprano State for nothing.
But it seems like, and I know we're going to have you back, and we need to have you back because we talk about these issues all the time, and we need your analysis, right? But given what Philadelphia does when we appeal to courts, we appeal to various things, and they make up things just to like, no, we're just going to murder you anyway. No, the Constitution doesn't apply. No. So in a situation like that, you're like the summer of 2020, but like you have a Black woman prosecutor, right? You want a Black woman prosecutor, we'll give you a Black woman prosecutor. And and it seems to be the opposite. So it seems like if we make demands, but those demands get met with people who they choose, right? Like it seems like if the problem is institutional in that way, then in 2020, you're like, yeah, there were those protests, but we're about to reelect Trump, right? Like there were those things that were going on, but like those reforms that you're talking about never got passed. There was no legislation that was really passed, like on a federal level, and most local legislation didn't even pass unless you had like Newark, right? So in Philadelphia, what does that mean? Like, we can't even get anti-lynching bills passed in 2020.
That's true. Well, another uniqueness about Philadelphia, Philadelphia was the first city to have a civilian review board in this country. And we just had an election 2 years ago where we got another civilian review board passed. So the police are on notice. They know, which, is a good thing. It's a bad thing. Former Commissioner Ramsey said that because every time you come up with some restraints on the police, it makes them less inhibited to do their job. And but they're on notice. They know that we're watching, and there are a lot of these groups do not get any press, but there are a lot of organizations, a strong one right there in Newark, and who are watching the police. I think what I really want to show in the book is that this is
People's Organization for Progress too. She spoke for the people.
Yes. I didn't want to say it because I couldn't remember the entire acronym.
I do that press.
That this did not just start, and this has a long history, and we're not over it yet. And we have to educate our people. We really, really need to educate our people on what's going on in these prisons and the school to prison pipeline, and we have to step up. And that's one thing about the 60s. We have all these organizations in Philly. And someone was telling me that, your friend Kelly Harris, Dr. Kelly Harris was just telling me, he said one of the problems with today in the youth is that we don't have all these organizations that specifically work with the youth like we did in the 60s. So we have to educate our young. It's amazing to me. I know I'm talking about hope, but Brother Austin, it's amazing to me that we're still alive. It really is.
We've been through a lot.
It really is. And so there's something working on our side, but there are a lot of us. I'm not the only Ife Williams. There's a lot of us out here really working on reparations and
that's what
criminal justice reform and reparations. Yeah,
reparations. And the African Heritage Studies Association, right? I have my
Yeah.
own history with that organization. Shashi McIntyre ran that for us at Rutgers Newark for years. She was a dear friend and teacher. Knew Dr. Clark very well. It did not get past me that you actually chaired an organization recently. That's important stuff. That's important stuff. That's a very important institution. That's one of ours that lifts up this kind of scholarship. So we definitely got to have you back on all of your dimensions. There's more to talk about this rotten ass
There's more to
police.
talk about. Well, right now
Oh,
we're
yeah.
working on slave. I'm working on slave revolts, but it's all the same. I didn't want people to think I was all over the place. But then I thought about revolts against slavery, police brutality, reparations. It's all, and you said it, Brother Austin. It's all about proving our humanness, and that's what Dr. Clark would say. Our personhood. Who are we as a people, and how have we been violated throughout history and up to the day?
Before you go, Zaid, if you could introduce briefly our next guest, and I want to give our next guest a chance to ask Dr. Williams a question if she wants to.
Because you won't do that? You're muted. Now this
Sure.
daughter right here, Ife, is an emerging voice that just had a very serious sojourn to the Middle East and to a particular area that's now in some huge turmoil. And I'm going to let her talk about that in a moment. But she's also the niece of an uncle who was recently killed by the police in Newton, New Jersey. Right, Major Goulier Dale III was her uncle, a career vet, several tours of duty, decorated vet, retired from the Pentagon, gets killed by the police. Dig this, on the 4th of July in a mental health crisis. Right? So, we can talk about this all day. Now, Boshia, I think you've heard some of Dr. Ife's presentation. Is there something that you wanted to ask of us before we transition to you?
Yes. One, I want to say I really appreciate everything that you touched on, because like you expressed about like really having to prove our humanness and like show people that we deserve to be alive and we deserve to live. I want to ask you, do you ever encounter, or do you feel like a lot of Black youth encounter being questioned about who they are because of how they speak? And how does this correlate to within slave times, within slavery times, like how you spoke as far as addressing someone or your cadence of speech? Because I'm getting a lot of, wow, you speak so well, and what is that coordination to, because I honestly understand it to be that we always spoke well, so like what is that connection within, society in the West versus like African countries, and they speak so many languages and you're like, oh, I'm so behind. So like where does that come from in the context of, when it comes to Europeans or Caucasians, like when they say that to us and then we're like, are we like we deserve to be defensive? Is it like, that's something that's really been spinning in my mind. What's the history of that?
It's a big question. Well, it's two things. One goes back to what I had mentioned earlier about the criminalization of the race. And with that, we have a cultural inferiority of the race, that we're less than. And that's when you always get, well, you're the exception to the rule. Right. And unfortunately, and this ties back into what Dr. Harris said about organizations, the lack of organizations that work with the youth today, is that what happens in this society is that we have all become very alienated from each other and from ourselves, which people say is a Marxist theory, but it's so true. And what I see with youth today is this need to prove they're human, their personhood, that they can feel. The whole thing with tattoos. I need to feel something. I need to be seen. I need to be heard, because they're no one's listening to them. And it's like Ralph Ellison, the invisible man.
Invisible
You
man.
do not
How about
exist.
that? How about
Yeah, you
that?
don't exist. And I think for people of my generation, we see that and we're kind of seasoned and we know that they're not going to see us anyway. So we're not even going to have a conversation with them. But I think what happens with the youth, they don't know that. They don't have those roots and they don't have that historical knowledge of our people. So they're out here trying to be a part of something that they're totally detached from a society. And they're trying to get acceptance from people who hate them. White people hate us.
Amir Barak called that the ghost of double consciousness. That's right.
And for right. And so young people would be like, well, what did I do? I'm just Black. I'm just being myself. Right.
That's kind of it.
They don't see that. Yeah. So yeah, but it is big. It is really big. And they don't have many role models, I look at TV and these reality shows and the way people act. Again, let me be seen. How far can I go?
Thank you for saying that. And just to connect what you said, because I'm thinking about how important it is, right? Like when you go like to Africa, you see like, wow, like my people know like 7-8 languages and they're switching in between. And I've learned English, you have people that learn French and Spanish, but they have learned our nothing. So who is really the person who's intellectual here when we think about a history and a lineage? Because I've seen the lengths that Black people go, African people will go to even just prove that they are smarter, and like doctorates and like, just on and on. And I realize that we're not in a complete realization of having what we have until we have knowledge of self and understanding our history, like you just said, because then that's when you can be like, okay, what do I do now to service? And that is what the youth is missing. We need our elders, and no matter how much we think we know, we talk about it all the time. I'm 33 and like I'm trying my best to be of help to the generation before, like that's coming up now, like that's after me. But they're like, we need older people, like we need like, where are the leaders, like, and that's what we're in our communities, because we are trying to figure out like the whole frame to the puzzle without all the pieces and the picture. So it's like having you guys expertise in generations of knowledge and experience needs to be brought into a space like on spaces or like places like where it's like really like these conversations are happening within the youth, because like we think we could do it, but we need the generations, and we need you guys. So I just wanted to say that.
Sankofa. You got to go back and get it, baby. Y'all can shake this damn thing down.
And I'm glad that that we did this last, and that this exchange, because I think more of them are needed. Dr. Williams, we are definitely going to have you back if you will come.
You gonna ask me a question, Jonathan?
Oh yes.
She's from Philadelphia. I want to hear the answer to some of this.
Fair enough. Yeah. We are a hip hop. We are political hip hop. We are a political hip hop talk show.
Well, you safe here,
everything that we do is in that spirit. And we always ask our guests a question at the end, and that's, who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group? Or it could be just who you're rocking with right now, who is inspiring you in the work that you're writing about and the work that you're doing.
When we say hip hop, I just think Tupac.
Okay.
Would he be categorized as
Black Panther Party?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And this is just a short commercial for your listeners. We have the Bloxham Center here in Philadelphia, one of the second largest archive of information about Black people all over the world, pictures, books. They even have a book that the cover of the book was made from the skin of a Black man. And the irony is that the book is about Abraham Lincoln. But I'm saying all this to say is that they have a ton of information on Tupac, some of the letters that he wrote while he was incarcerated, the original letters, and all his correspondence is there. And that's on Temple University's campus there. But
Okay.
but I'm
got to bring the queen back.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
like you saw my jaw drop on that. Well, when we come back, we'll have to start there, right? And go.
Oh, you want to start with the blocks and collection? Okay.
Oh yeah, and also like
we got plenty to talk about with you.
I got a lot of questions, but and especially with you. So thank you so much. We definitely
thank you for having me. I really enjoyed being here.
And we definitely enjoyed having you on. So very soon we're going to be asking you to come back because you are important to our to the stuff that we talk about. So thank you.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night. So we are getting ready to move to the center, the interview for this time, right? Like when Zaid has an incredible introduction, started with the introduction, but Zaid does better introductions than me. He does. And so he's just, Zaid, do the introduction, and we have a lot to talk
about. Already, you
did part of an introduction.
Yeah, just part of it, because I do not want that to be lost in our conversation with her, because it is so timely, because we've got stuff coming up right now, and her mother is really beginning to find her own voice as a victim survivor in this whole question of police brutality. That is something that we all should appreciate it. So I'm glad we had that moment, right? And that's a grounding moment, right?
When I looked at the bio and the guest that we had on, I thought there might be right
on point, right? Now if you had to look at her little bio, right? Not only she had his trip, but she involved in a whole lot of stuff. I screamed a few minutes ago about you when I saw this Artists Against Apartheid. Because let me tell you something. Back in the late 70s, right? And that's how old my old ass is now, right? Me running around with a guy like Lawrence Hammond, who we finally call Odimu Chunga, his African name, right? We did a whole lot of hell raising around the apartheid that was South Africa, right? And we had a whole boycott network called Artists Against Apartheid, right? Now this daughter, who's a poet, who's a model, right? Into all kind of stuff, entrepreneur, right? Traveler, all the stuff that she's into, right? I saw this Artists Against Apartheid. I said, oh my, I said, I want in on some of that, right? Now, the context in which we're having this conversation, Boshia, of course, is what's happening in Gaza, right? And the fact that you had a chance to visit some of that territory just recently, you connected with folks over there, right? Have your own fresh take on what is happening in that part of the world and whatnot. But so, and this Artists Against Apartheid is against Israeli apartheid, right? So so I just want to welcome you to the space, right? I want to appreciate you for what you dared to do with that trip, right? I'm glad you got back before the drama really escalated, because it's dangerous.
And I was going to ask, in terms of when you tell us also, when did it take place as well?
As far as my trip, right?
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So the trip was like between a 4 to 5 month span, or maybe even 6, because I went in April. It was still very tense, like the way that Palestine is being occupied and has been occupied since 1948 is, something that you don't know until you go. Like, you really think you understand until you go, which I'm sure, like, in any place that's being occupied, you don't know until you actually physically there. So I went for the last 10 nights. As Muslims, we have a holy month and it's Ramadan. So I went for the last 10 nights of Ramadan. And as I'm flying into Tel Aviv, I felt my chest tightening. I was very, on guard, because I was already told by those who I was meeting there that, just, make sure when you come in, you just, come in with your head down, keep it pushing, get your visa, you should be fine. They'll let you ride through. And so they looked at my passport, and I had to wait, because when they looked at me and they looked at my passport, they saw that I didn't have an Arab last name, but I had been to Yemen and Egypt multiple times. And so they were looking at me and they were looking at my passport like, what's your father's last name? And I told them it's the same last name as mine. And they were like, okay, you're gonna have to sit over there. And so I did, and I sat there for about up to 6 hours. I was in the airport. Wow. Yeah, I was basically held with other Muslims. They were all waiting to meet up with groups that they were meeting. They came later to meet up with groups. We were all just waiting there, and we were the only ones. There was sisters with hijab, and there was brothers who were clearly Muslim that were sitting there. It was very, how can I say this without getting myself like upset, because it was triggering, but at the same time I realized what was happening because I was already pre-warned. Mm-hmm. So within that context, as I waited, people were coming in, going out, people were coming in, going out, and then finally I go in to sit in the office to get questioned, and they asked me my name, they asked me my father's name, they asked me my grandfather's name. They asked me, am I Arab? Do I have any Arab family? They asked me, what do I do for a living? Why am I here? And they flipping through my passport. They're like, you look like a woman that was here, and we're looking for that is wanted for smuggling drugs from Egypt. And I was like, oh, they're like, yeah, because you've been back and forth to Egypt, right? And I'm like, okay, when was this? And they were like, yeah, she this was in the 70s. And I was like, look at me and think about what you're saying. You know what I'm saying? Like,
70s.
Wait, stop.
Right.
You said you look like somebody who was running drugs from Egypt in the 1970s?
Yeah. From there to Tel Aviv yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Wait, I'm sorry. I just need to ask again, because I think I may have misheard you. You're saying that you waited for 6 hours, mm-hmm. right, with other Muslims who were there. Mm-hmm. And when you were questioned, they literally said that you look like, they thought you might be suspicious because you look like a person who was running drugs from Egypt to Tel Aviv. Mm-hmm. You.
Yeah.
In the 1970s.
Correct.
Did you have like the Cicely Tyson autobiography of Jane Pittman makeup thing going on? Like were you just aging yourself out? Like what? Right. Like I'm asking, like what? And in a way, I'm doing the exact same thing our previous guest was talking about, right? Like, were they? Is there another side to, like, how could they have really thought that you were like running drugs from the 70s?
It was
because they were looking for a reason to detain her.
They wanted me to get upset and get triggered. So what happened was, in that moment, the guy who like said it looked at the other guy and was like kind of like laughed because it was stupid. And right. I looked at them, I was like, did one of those, and I was like, oh, well, I hope you find her, and that was that. And they were like, okay, so they asked me, what do I do? And I told them that I'm a teacher. They're like, what do you teach? I'm like, I teach hip-hop arts and culture. And they were like, oh, like hip-hop, like rapping and stuff. And I was like, yeah. And they proceeded to like, want to talk about, and I'm like, I just want to get out of here. Honestly, do not want to talk to you guys because I know what this is about. And I just want to leave. So what happened was, as I was leaving, they just said, enjoy your time, because I wasn't hostile. I just laughed because it's the only thing I can do to stop from crying, because I felt like a prisoner. I felt like I was being in a detainment situation, and I did nothing wrong.
Yes, you absolutely were detained. Might not have been charged with anything, but you were definitely detained.
Right.
So so talk to us some more about, like, where did you go?
So once I left there, I was met by an amazing brother. We got into the car. I was meeting up with the group I was with, and the driver who was sent by the group. And he said, "Welcome to Philistine." And I was like, "Thank you." He was like, "Yeah, I'm sorry you had to go through that." And I was like, "This is the price that, a lot of Muslims pay to come into Palestine." When I got into the car and we're driving, I just felt like I was in another place, because you actually can understand what the turmoil is about and like why people want to fight over this land, but how you feel so at home. As a Black person, I do understand that my roots have been up and down the continent across, because when we think about when we say the Middle East, we're talking about the Middle East of what? We're actually talking about the Middle East of Africa, right? So like Palestine is my people's land too, right? So when I was there, as we're driving, we end up in Jerusalem. That's where I was staying, in Jerusalem, to be in the old city, to be in the Holy Land and walk amongst, many different people of many different faiths, coming to do pilgrimages, coming to understand who they are in context to their religion. And it was just a beautiful place to be, because no one had any hostility towards each other. It was just the IDF that was very hostile.
That for everybody should know, and if you don't, Jerusalem has spiritual significance for all three of the Abrahamic faiths, for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, right? And for folks who don't understand the connection of Jerusalem to Islam, tell folks about Alaska and why you went to Jerusalem.
So I went for these last 10 nights of Ramadan, and Al-Aqsa is such a beautiful place, where what happened there was Isra and Miraj, which is the night journey where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, ascended to heaven on this place we call Qubbat al-Sukra, which is in Arabic the Dome of the Rock. And that is where, a lot of people see the gold shrine, the gold dome. It's inside of that masjid. It's inside of that building. Al-Aqsa is the whole entire grounds. And on Al-Aqsa, you have, on the left, you come in and you can walk up past Bab al-Azbat, which is the gate of the lion. You come out. On the left is where Solomon's throne was, but it's now a prayer room. It's now a prayer area. And as you're walking, you can go down to Mirwani, where you keep going straight. You can walk down where Mary was given food and sustenance by God. And then on the left hand side is going down is Bab al-Rahma, which is the doors of mercy, where it said that Jesus will come through and lead the Muslims in prayer. And I can go on and on about the history of Al-Aqsa, but it's the whole entire courtyard, and every single prophet that has ever existed has walked on those grounds. And you really feel the energy there. You can understand why you need to go. You understand why, as a human being, you should be there, and why this land, this specific place, Al-Aqsa, was something that Jews believed to be their Temple Mount, right? And like now, as they keep digging underground, they keep finding more Arabic. They keep digging underground. They keep trying to find Solomon's temple, but it's no longer there, because as we understand as Muslims in the Quran, it has gone. It has ascended, and the only thing left is this, which we have on the left, which is Qubbat al-Sukra. But this was Solomon's empire. Was what God left was this worship, was what he did. He put his life into worshiping God. And so the problems that arise from there when you're on the grounds of Al-Aqsa, it's a very tense, but you go there and you really like, wow, I spent 6 hours. Like, it was so worth it, waiting there. And some people spend over long, 12 hours maybe, but being there, I didn't want to leave. Like, I felt like I was in heaven on earth. I literally couldn't believe what I was seeing, and the birds circulate, doing this circumambulation around the actual Qubbat al-Sukra, the Dome of the Rock, and then flying in and out of the buildings. And, bugs that don't even exist in Jerusalem were coming from Saudi Arabia. And I was like, how is that possible? And they're like, there's different portals in this space. There's like different spaces where, and those who understand like the depthness of like the unseen and the seen. Like these are things that we don't know. How is this happening? These bugs don't even exist in Jerusalem because of the climate. They only exist in Saudi Arabia, Medina, but they're coming through, here, they're here as well. So, and this was in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, which is like a really heavy time. It's really spiritually heavy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, having said that, unfortunately, all folks of all faiths are not treated the same in Jerusalem. What did you witness and experience when you were there?
I witnessed a lot of, I was being questioned towards the last 10 nights. Often, so when I was coming in to go pray, and they say, "Where are you from? Like, why are you here?" And I'm coming through to pray, and even Muslims would say, "Can you recite Al-Fatiha? Are you Muslim? Because we need to know." And then, once I got in and I saw, people trying to come in who weren't Muslims, and the Muslims were like, "You can't come in here, you're not Muslim. Like, you can't come in here." And I was like, "Oh, that's so sad. Like, why won't you let them come? Maybe this is a good chance to teach them or give them dawah." They said, "No, we've tried that before, but people went against us. We allowed Christians to come in and they went against us, and they allowed Jews to come in. And that's why they occupy a corner of where the Western Wall is, where the Jews worship on the other side. They occupy that corner because they were tricked." So there's a lot of guard up. And so even when we were walking, when I was seeing like the pilgrimages that the Christians were doing, they were going to each station that Isa, Islam, Jesus was like, he held the cross, right? Like he walked to all these stations and what it says in their Bible, right? So when I saw that, I was like, interesting. I've never even thought that there was it opened my mind up, and I saw how Jews would just look at them in disgust. Like they literally would spit in their walk path while they were carrying those crosses as a group doing their pilgrimage, but they weren't paying attention because they were so engulfed with like that doing their pilgrimages. Like they didn't even see it, but I did, because I wasn't in a pilgrimage state. Like I wasn't in a pilgrim state. I was like walking and looking at all of the things surrounding me. And as I went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, I saw that the people who have the keys are Muslims.
Wow.
I saw
Wow.
the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is where it was said that Isa's body was washed, Jesus's body was washed before I believe it was sacrifice, or after he died, I believe. That's the whole context. And so they go there and they kind of like sit, the Christians sit there, but the people who have the key to that is a Muslim family. They're making it easy for the Christians to come in, like, because the Jews will not, like, they don't want anybody but them there. Let's be clear. So the Muslim family that's holding that key, that was passed down generations, because Omar ibn Khattab signed a treaty that all religions can practice safely here in Jerusalem. And that was the original agreement. And then, once Jews came and once Israelis came, like, it then began to become a turf war versus a peaceful practicing place of all religions where everyone could, meet, greet, and connect and, support each other on that journey to God. So what I understand it as is that, Muslims and Christians have to stick together in that specific, area, especially because there is, a lot of hostility, a lot of animosity towards anyone who's not Israeli, because they do want to occupy that. They want to occupy Al-Aqsa. They want to take over Al-Aqsa. When they're there, they disrespect it. They throw cigarettes. They spit. They're very disrespectful of this specific holy place in particular. It's not like they don't do that at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. They don't do that.
A question. You said something along the lines of like Christians and Muslims need to stick together, or what do you mean by that? And is that something that you saw and experienced in terms of Christians and Muslims working together because I'm asking this because a lot of people might not know that there are a lot of Christians there, right? Like as in there are a lot of Christians there are a lot of Arab Christians, there are a lot of who are there, right? Like, and so what did you see in terms of Christians and Muslims working together? Because you hear a lot about like levels of intolerance. There are lots of stereotypes about Islamic intolerance, but what you're talking about is like a normalcy of Christians and Muslims working together, and that's a question in terms of what did you see and experience?
Yes. Well, it was so beautiful to see, and it was mainly families that, they know they have Christian family that are Arab, and there are some people that are Muslim, and also people who were coming to do pilgrimages. Like, I met this amazing, woman. She was from Ireland. I met a woman from Ethiopia. We spoke, and they felt safe in front of masjids. They felt like they could rest there when they were doing their pilgrimages, and they felt like they could like take a load off, and they felt safe to rest in front of mosques, because they're all around the old city. And I just saw like the support of like, oh, you can pass through here, and like there was no disrespect. There was only like, okay, I see you, you see me, we're both people of the book, and we both respect each other. There was no spitting, there was no like disrespecting anyone's religion. There was just an understanding that this is a place that we all need to come to get closer to God. And what I saw in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, like when that was a prime example of who holds the key to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, who unlocks the door of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It is Muslims who want to like support Christians on their journey to God, and also remind them that this is a holy place, because I saw the Muslims like, you need to cover before you go inside, because this is a holy place. So you can't go in there without covering. So like they were like, okay, yeah. So because they understand also in their book it says to cover as well. So they were like really being aids on their guide for their pilgrimages to be successful. And I really appreciated that, because they were guarding, that's a safeguard key. They're protecting so that Christians can come in, because if they don't, we already know what the Jews believe about Isa. We already know what the Jews believe about Jesus, and which is heartbreaking, and so because Muslims believe in Isa, Jesus as a prophet, they have to protect, because it's a part of their Islam. It's a part of our deen. We can't leave that unkept. We can't leave that unprotected. So that's something that we understand is a part of history. And then we understand the evolving of history. So like that connection. And I've seen also in these spaces as well, where some Christian women want to come into, Al-Aqsa, but, the guards are just like, no. And my heart breaks for them. And other Muslim women as well want, other, Christian women to come, or families to come see like the Dome of the Rock, to come see Qubbat al-Sukra. But the way that it's so heavily protected, it's really like, because the Muslims are on edge, because they have been betrayed so many times. So I do believe that understanding the history is really important, understanding like, how these two overlap, and how even Omar ibn Khattab wrote a treaty and said, everyone, is here to practice, their religion safely, can come here and practice safely. I'm writing this treaty, and you guys have to follow it. And so this is for all of us to have peace. And so having, any type of discrepancy I didn't see it at all. It was just harmony, between Muslims and Christians, and also Jews. I definitely would say like Jews that exist in a historical state from Ethiopia, their Habesha, right? Like they're peace. It's all love, all peace. Coptic Christians, like the original Jews, like it was no problems, So that's something that I really appreciated, because it opened my eyes to understand, why is there so much turmoil, and why is religion always on the forefront when it comes to why are wars started? Oh, it's because of religion. Like, remove God from the equation of why man wants to start war. How about we do that first, and then we can actually have a legitimate conversation about this as a collective vision, how we all believe in God, and then from there have our own, because spirituality is personal. It's not something that should be put on the forefront for people to fight over. It should be put in a place where it is debased, because I'm this religion, that's why we're killing. Don't do that to God. Don't put that on God. That's on us as human beings to recognize the lies and the falsehood, right? Because even when you think about what they understand and what Christians understand is like they have, you talk to them and they're like, yes, this is my original text. This is the Injil, right? Like this is written in Aramaic. This is the book. I don't know what other people believe, but we believe in God. But the original book is in this language, and everything else after has been tainted. And so we have to understand what King James Version did to society, and as it's still, you can't really unpack it until you start asking the questions and understand that the first question is, who colonized religion, and go from there, right? Because it happens, and it happened with Arabs. Arabs did that as well, because the first Arabs are from Sudan, right? Right. So like we talk about Islam, but we don't really realize that the first masjid was in Ethiopia. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, came from his lands and went to Ethiopia because his own people didn't accept him, right? And so when we think about Africans as a whole, and even being there, seeing Afro-Arabs, seeing Afro-Palestinians, how they are also the ones who serve their community and their society. Like they literally are the ones there supporting everyone, but they just kind of get a blind eye turned to, right? Like it's like, yeah, that's what they're here for. That's what, you know, and I noticed that as well, you know, so that these are things that we have to unpack on the conflict, because one of my teachers specifically said to me that, you know, what happens when people are humiliated, because in the Quran it says, woe to the Arabs, Juj and Majuj will destroy you, Gog and Magog will destroy you. And this can be a Zionist Christian and a Zionist Jew unlocked, right? You have Juj and Majuj, like we're like, okay, they're like, we're gonna take over this land, we're gonna destroy everything. But when you do not reflect on your own self, and you do not change the condition of your own being, God will not change the condition of the people. So there's a lot of reflection that needs to be done within the context of everyone who exists in Palestine, every single person, because there are Black people there, and I can have a conversation with the Arab like, oh, that's only like less than 3%. I can have a conversation with a Palestinian that is from America, and they'd be like, oh, that's only less than 3%. So why are you trying to blackwash Palestine? And wow. I'm like, are you serious right now? So this is the issue that we have, and we have to understand it's not just about the colonization of religion, but the colonization of the people, because when you understand suffering for over, like generational suffering for over 400 something years, right? And you understand and you connect it to like, this is 50 something years, like you're almost at 50 something years of being obliterated across the board, like and you can't connect to the oppression of other people who have, you know, like this is when 1948 was happening, and then and you keep going, and there's like, oh, like this is happening, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, no one's helping us. We can now connect on the oppression on a real level when you understand that it wasn't always about like religion, it was about race, and it was about control. Like this is about white privilege and about entitlement and about, oh, this is the land that we deserve. Because if that was the case, if Sudanese people needed to go to Palestine and they needed to be let in, are the doors wide open? You know, instead of moving Israel from one place to another. So these are questions that I continuously bring up. It's very, you know, it touches nerves, because it's like, oh, so what are you trying to say? Like I'm trying to say that all of these things and the support that Palestine always needed was always with their brothers and sisters that supported them in the beginning. But when you are, you know, you're thinking like a colonizer, when you have the mind of a colonizer and the colonizer is in you, right? Like you start to colonize your own people. You are doing that. You're helping the colonizer colonize your own people. And therefore it's all access. And that's how they infiltrate. And so when I think about religion in the gateway to do that, it has everything to do with how people think that they deserve to be a certain religion because they come from a certain lineage.
What more like did you do? Like what more about in terms of your travels, and what did you travel and what was your trip purely a pilgrimage to see?
What was the human connections?
Right. Like where'd you go? What were some of the things what were some of the things you did after or before the mosque? And I'll have some more questions for you too, kind of like the travel.
So thank you for that. I went to visit one of my close family members now. We're family, Afro-Palestinian family that lives there. I went to their house often, actually. You know, I would come from the mosque, and they live right outside of the old. They live literally right next to one of the doors that you can enter Al-Aqsa. So I would go there. They would, you know, cook us food, and we would sit and talk. We would ask them about their history. You know, they were from Chad, Sudan, Senegal, and how they came to come, you know, in a place where they were not originally always welcome, but they were told by their family, you have to come here to protect Al-Aqsa. So they came years ago before 1948. They came, and then their family told them to come. And so they came during, you know, 1948 and the Nakba, like the beginning. So they would talk to us about, you know, how all they know is being Palestinian. They would say, I'm Palestinian, I'm Afro-Palestinian, that's all I know. And, you know, being there and then going to another family who's Palestinian, you know, and connecting with them having me over for dinner, just listening to them, you know, about how they experience being in Ramadan with all the Muslims. That this was like two, you know, Muslim families. One was Black and one was Arab. One was Afro-Palestinian, the other one was Arab. And what I really understood was that they get sad when Westerners go home because they don't feel protected anymore. They feel like we should come all the time. They feel like us being there protects them because they're not going to do anything if we're there. As we know, like we've seen what's going on in Gaza, it really doesn't matter who's there. If they have an agenda, they're going to completely wipe out people and commit genocide and murder people. That's one thing that is really honestly, like, you know, true and evident. And one of the things that we spoke about was how the relationship to being in Al-Aqsa, and they, you know, they just felt really like, you know, it's sad that we have to, some people can't, they live right on the outside of Al-Aqsa, but because the IDF is right there and they question them, they live literally in the old city. They can enter from the gates and go right there. Some people who live right there can't even go on the grounds of Al-Aqsa because they look at their ID and it says Palestinian. It doesn't say that they're Israeli, and they don't have a Hebrew ID.
Actually,
so that
was a question I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So when you were there, you were in legally Israel proper, Jerusalem. The Palestinian family that you were living with, they're Arab Israelis, or not Arab Israelis, but like Palestinian Israelis by way of being African American, or just like, because it was interesting, and I'm not sure of. When you're like, they were there, their family's been there generationally since 1948 when they came there, and you were like, there were Afro-Palestinian families, and the way you're describing it, are they African Americans from the United States whose family came in 1948, or
they're from the continent?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. They're from the continent, and they were told by their family that you have to take over this land, this property that we have now, so that you can protect Al-Aqsa, because when the end of days, or the last days will come, is when they will come in and try to destroy Al-Aqsa. That's like how they know. So they're there to protect and fight them off as long as possible, you know, so that the people can be protected. Because what happens is, like, once they destroy that, that's what it says in the Quran, like the end of days will start. Like it's just over, you know, everything's over. Like, you know, so they were sent there based upon their family who were alive, that was living there. They're from Chad, Sudan, Senegal, Nigeria, even, like, you know, and they were sent there to go protect that because they bought land before the Nakba, like before that. And so they said, you need to keep this up and like stay here. Don't leave here, hold this fort down. And so they're holding down the fort essentially. Yeah.
And so there's so many different questions like where that come up in terms of they're basically they're Israeli citizens, right? Like, and
so some of them refuse to do that. Some of them refuse to, and so because they still have their old Palestinian IDs and they haven't updated them, or they, you know, refuse to, you know, take classes in Hebrew, you know, they pretty much are Palestinian in their heart and on their ID, and they're not willing to do that. they have difficulties moving around, moving about certain quarters of the old city. And also in Palestine in general, like I call it Palestine, I don't call it Israel. So I don't call any section of it, even when I went. So I'll tell you, I want to make sure I answer all your questions, but I will say that I did go to the parts that are, you know, occupied, and you do need to cross over to go through an actual like a checkpoint. So I did go to Ramallah, which is like a heavily occupied, it's not occupied by IDF, but it is like a Palestinian area because the police there are Palestinian. You know, you actually see the Palestinian parts of what is like Palestine. So I went into Ramallah from Jerusalem. We had to go in through Calandria. We had to go through a checkpoint, which is like airport security, y'all. Like I was like, hold on, just to go to another city, this is crazy, you know, like even the cars, what they have to go through. But because I was on foot, like you literally get dropped off on the other side of the checkpoint. You have to walk across the street or over a bridge. You go inside, you get checked. They look at you, they look at your ID, you know, you get stopped, or there's like a metal detector, and then they're just looking at you like, why are you here? You know, and it's just like, because I'm here to visit Palestine. I'm in Beit al-Muqaddas, like the house of the Holy Land. Like this is what I'm doing here. And they're like, okay, whatever. And then they'll let you go. But like when you go, it's literally like you feel the difference because there's not as much tension. But when I tell you when I was over there, how much I lost service, like it was going in and out. Like my service was like in and out to the point where me and my friend got lost. Like I was with my friend and it was so crazy because I had her one moment and then I didn't have her. And then I had her one moment and I couldn't find her. And I was like, oh my gosh, like my heart. And I was like, okay, let me come out. Let me go to the main area, the main street. And I had service, and we had a miscommunication because I didn't have service. And I can see how, and then even the times were different. Like the time in Jerusalem for prayer is different for the time but it's all the same area. And it's like, it showed me how they can play with that, like over there. I was like, okay, like this is something that can really cause, you know, a detriment to people if they're trying to move and organize. They can't organize if your phone's not working, your service, you got to meet up, or time says 8:20 and it's actually 7:20 somewhere on someone else's phone, you know. And that was really like something that I realized, like these are tactics of, you know, war and tactics of enemies that they use to be able to prevent people from gathering in groups. So like once I left there, we went back to Jerusalem.
And just for clarification, Ramallah's in the West Bank, would be considered like when they call it the West Bank. It would not be, which is very different geographically. On the other end would be Gaza, where the controversy is right now.
Correct.
All right, and didn't mean to interrupt you. You were talking.
No worries. And this was like maybe the third day, and I would say before that we actually went to go to Bethlehem, where the wall is, where I'm pretty sure a lot of people have seen, like, you know, the wall in Bethlehem. And we had a mission, me and my friend. We really wanted to go there to bring, you know, some money to one of the camps there, the camps that, you know, it's helping kids, like to really just help them, you know, get infiltrated in that specific area, because where Bethlehem is far from Gaza, but a lot of people from Gaza were also coming to Bethlehem. So when we went there, you know, the kids weren't there. They were, you know, visiting different people that, like, they formed family. They winded up forming family, and it was just crazy because when you go in, you're so nervous because you see how tall the wall is. You see all of these, you know, these windows and these like security stations at the top of the wall, and you don't know, like, you want to go to be able to do something good, but once you sneak down, because there's no way to get down, you have to walk around the wall and walk through. So we walked around, you know, my friend was like, okay, no, we can't do this. I don't know I don't know how to get in. I was like, there's a way to get in, and we're already over here. I'm not going all the way back. So we went down and we went through down there, which I'm pretty sure my mom's listening to this. And if I would have told her that what I did, she probably would have freaked out, because the way the wall was so high and you could see movement, you don't know what's going to happen. You hear stories. We just came from, you know, the museum that was there, the Banksy Museum. And what happens is, like, what happens, like, when you get a call, if you are a Palestinian inside of a home that Israelis coming to occupy and, you know, kill people, essentially, you get one call, you have 3 minutes to get out of your house now.
Whoa.
And, you know,
What, like, I mean,
3 minutes. Go ahead,
it's
John.
interesting because it went through, like, you were telling a story about, like, exploring and finding different parts, and then you talked about this wall, and then it started getting, like, real dark real fast, like
Yeah.
the movie genre changed, right? Like, instead of a coming of age and let's explore something, we're in a different country, to, like, you might have 3 minutes to get out. Like, what? Give me the background on that.
So when we were,
People are saying, like, because a lot of, like, I think that the important parts of this conversation are some of the most important, valuable to me, is that you have a perspective from being there and hearing other perspectives about what is said and what people believe there, in terms of, like, danger, risk. And you started talking about, like, a story of just exploring to something, and I'm like, oh, what is the thing that you're being warned about? Why would your mother have been worried about you? What is the like, yeah, like, the genre changed real fast, right? Like, in terms of, like, oh, you might have 3 minutes to get out, or, you know, that type of level of worry. Talk to me.
right. So let me go back. So before we went to go to the refugee camp there that they have for the kids, we went to the Banksy Museum. And what the Banksy Museum expresses is, like, you know, the art during the resistance of the Nakba, what happened, and also just in general the history of documentaries of different Palestinian artists that have shown what they've gone through. And the last thing that they had in the museum was that phone call, because it had been recorded some time ago of an IDF soldier calling and saying, you have 3 minutes to get out of your home if you do not want to be killed. And so it was very traumatizing, because I didn't know what I was gonna, you know, I was just picking up the phone. I'm in a museum. I'm not sure what to expect, but I see everything that I've already, you know, walked through. And I was like, okay, I'm so heavy, like, feeling so, like, just down. And, like, it was really dark, because when I came to the phone, I wasn't expecting that. I thought it was going to be a mom or something, like, calling, or someone, like, you know, but I never thought I would hear the recording of an IDF soldier saying, you have 3 minutes to get out before we kill you, or, like, before we bomb your house. So that was the end of the museum. And then me and my friend spoke about, like, just in general, like, what we just experienced in going, because we went to the museum, like, basically after we did that. But I was like, if we did this before, I don't think I could have did that. So we walked down to the actual West Bank wall, like where the Bethlehem wall is, and we walked down, and then we found a way to get inside. We were exploring, and it was beautiful, because I will say that we found an artist that makes beautiful rings out of tear gas bombs, beautiful jewelry, this amazing, you know, pain into power, like,
Tear gas
creative
bombs.
Yeah, so the tear gas bombs that they throw, like the tear, she makes jewelry out of all of that, and she's showing how she experienced all this pain, but she's turning it into power. And, like, within that experience, you know, it hurt her, and it turned out to be something that she was able to it was a reminder of what they did, you know, but she's wearing that struggle, right? And so I ended up getting some pieces. So we were there to explore, and we were there to see the Palestinian community in the West Bank, but it just seemed so, like, unlively. It seemed like they were, like, you know, like, you have to look over, you know, behind you, there's a wall as tall as I don't know what, and, like, you have to look up and just make sure you're good, because the wall is so high. They can just throw things down, they can shoot from up there. So you don't know what you're getting yourself into. You're just like, you're going here for a good cause. You're just, like, walking down, and it's so quiet. It's so quiet. It's like a community that was once lively, it's so silent. Like you see people walking and they're like, hi, you know, salam, like they're very quiet. And I was just like, wow, it was really shocking to see how they lived on a day-to-day, and they felt constricted. They felt like they couldn't really live. And so experiencing that, I think coming out of leaving Bethlehem and then going into the actual museum and hearing that phone call was like, this is the reality. This is what they go through. This is like, yeah, you have 3 minutes to get out before we bomb your house. Like, this is like, and they're like, oh, we called you. Like, you know, and that's their excuse. That's their, you know, way to back up their claim. Oh, we called that house. And this was during the time of the Nakba. They don't even do that anymore. So that was really heavy to experience. And I think coming out, I just saw Palestine in a different way. I saw the resilience of the people. I saw the connection to being oppressed, you know, white supremacy, and like seeing how it comes in and slithers into a place that is lively and full of culture and full of love and light, and how it can just like make you, you know, really down and like make you feel like there's no hope. But these people are so resilient, and they just say, thank God, you know, God is great, you know, alhamdulillah, you know, all praises due to God. This is all written. They're so attached to their faith and their belief and their understanding that you really do not feel that you are like with normal people. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, you know, God bless, you know, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. And I would say one of the last experiences that was one of the last days I was there. I was literally being stopped to go inside Al-Aqsa because this was one of the last nights, and a lot of Western Muslims left. So they didn't know who was who at this point. It's very few numbers coming, right? In the beginning, when I was there, it was like over 300,000. We're like filling up the whole Al-Aqsa. But now we're like maybe 100, 200. And so now they're like, where are you from? Like, you know, they're stopping me. Like, why are you going here right now? What are you going to do? Like, where are you going to pray? How are you going to pray here? And I'm just like looking at them. I'm like, do you hear me speaking right now? Like, do you like, and I'm like disgusted because I'm thinking about how our tax dollars goes towards doing what they're doing over there. And the same people who train the IDF actually train the police in this country, in America. And so what I was really understanding in that was I have to connect my people to coming here. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim, doesn't matter if you're Christian. If you're Black, you need to come to Palestine. You need to also take back that claim and understand that this is your roots as well. Because whenever I talk to an Arab person that is Black and they tell me, what do you think you're in the Middle East of? Like, they literally say, like, you're in Africa, right? Like, this is not just an Arab land. This is for people who want to connect to God and to see the history in real time, and to see and to feel what is surrounding them. And so, yeah, and I think about all of the connections of, you know, all the songs, Lauryn Hill songs, and like, you know, really just being there. And I'm like, this is insane. Like, when you're there, you don't really understand what you're experiencing in that moment until you leave and you're like, that actually happened, because it doesn't feel real. It really, Al-Aqsa it seems like it's heaven. Like, it doesn't even feel real. So that's one thing I will say about the last nights that I experienced. And going into the morning, coming out of one of the masjids or Bab al-Rahma, the doors of mercy, this is a place where the IDF continues to badger, to break the lights and destroy property inside of this area. I was in there by myself. There was no one there. It was very quiet because it's Eid, right? So like everyone's sleeping, resting. And this guy, he comes in and he's like sneaking around looking. And all I remember is me asking him, excuse me, are you Muslim? Because that's all they asked me the whole time I was there. And he just looked at me. He's like, he didn't know anyone was there. He left. And I kid you not, when I got on the plane and I looked at my phone, the same guy who was there ordering the IDF to rip everything down. And I literally just sat back in my seat on the plane and was bawling, crying. Like, I really felt so helpless. I felt like I could have done more.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Wow. Like, and that's why I said that, like, some of the like more conversations. Travel is always good. Perspectives, because I think that there are generational differences in perspectives on this issue in particular that I think more people just have to recognize and know, right? Like, because I think that not understanding just means that people are dealing from points of ignorance. You are also a poet, right? And we're going to transition into the next segment, but I want to invite you to stay for the next segment because you're a hip hop educator, right? And segment this is All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop talk show. So with that, right? Like, well, first I'm gonna ask you the question that we ask all our guests, and then we're gonna try to get you fully in the mix and learn from your perspectives on hip hop. So, who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual, or group? Who you're rocking with now? Who helps you on your journey?
Oh my gosh, you want me to say one?
You can say two.
So whatever you want.
So I will say, okay, I'll say it in this order. So in the beginning, it was definitely Lauren for sure. Group Dead Prez, and now it's definitely Black Thought and Saw Rock.
Now let me add now. This brother comes, and this is our DJ, the great DJ Rhino, as he gets ready to come in this conversation. Let me ask you this.
She's good with me right now. I can tell you.
I feel
Black Thought and Saw Rock. We good.
I got you. Yeah. What did you now? And in terms of the folks you know, what you've seen, right? What does hip hop look like for Palestinians?
Hip hop looks like their voice that they need to connect to. One that I don't feel like they use as much, but I feel like what it is in this moment is this kufaya. Like everyone that you see rocking this is hip hop. Like this is their hip hop. This is their way of expressing themselves and letting people know where they stand, just like hip hop does when you open your mouth and you say where you at with things, and also your style, right? Like the kufaya is their hip hop. I feel the watermelon, like, you know, that's their hip hop. That's what it is for them. Like how they understand hip hop is different. When I talk to different Palestinians, some of them like it and some of them just like the Arab music, especially like Afro Palestinians. I'd be like, oh my gosh, you don't like hip hop? I'd be looking at them like, what? Like, what is going on? But they like their Arab music, and they like lovey Arab music. They're very like huge lovers. But I feel like as far as a culture, it's the kufaya for sure.
And shout out to Neelam Hakeem. You know about Neelam, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another one. You know, she represents for that. You know, so
Definitely.
Shout out to that queen as well.
Definitely.
Are you into Jasiri X? You know Jasiri?
Wait, say that.
Jasiri X from Pittsburgh, from Steel Town.
No, I don't know who that is.
Bad boy done some strong hip hop solidarity for the Palestinian question.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, you putting me on because I just be having my head in a book learning languages right now. So you putting me on. I just have my playlist that I listen to and nothing else because that radio is tainted with I don't know what is going on. So
yeah. It's a little toxic.
Yeah.
But
thank you. Put me on.
No, also, just we appreciate you as a poet as well, and I know that like that in terms of just those levels of connection with words and artistry. Are you like are you writing now like books or where are you at as an artist?
That's a good question. Look at you with the questions. He's a good introer. You're the good question.
Don't forget Artists Against Apartheid too. We got to open that up. There.
So wait, were you finished with your question? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, that's it. No question. Was like where are you as an artist? What are you doing? What are you working on? What are you publishing? What do you want to talk about with your own artistry?
So right now I am just really focusing on finishing up my poetry book, and what you see online, what you can see on Instagram or on X or on any platform, TikTok, I really just make these short clips that connect people to my travels with my poetry on top of it as well, like short little haikus on my Instagram. And yeah, right now, you know, people asking your girl for features. They try to get me back into hip hop, back in MCing. So I'm really like straddling the fence with that, because I stepped away because I felt like I wanted to really take it to a whole nother literary level when it comes to hip hop. But I'm a teacher, you know, so like I'm like, how can an MC not MC when you challenge them to MC? Like, you know,
take those features. Take those features. Take those features. Now's the time.
For sure.
Take those features.
For sure. Because when I first came out, nobody was rocking with me. They were like, why are you so conscious? Like, what words are you saying? I have to go get a dictionary when I first came out. And, you know, like I kind of just took a back seat and was like, you know what? I really just want to focus on, you know, getting my craft to a point. And so when, you know, Baba Zayd said like, oh, she models, but I always was an MC first. When no one respected like what I was doing, I still had at it, and I rapped in underground spaces, and people really respected what I was. They were like, yo, you like a modern day Lauryn Hill. But the reason why I backed away from it is because I saw the toxicity in the industry, and I just didn't want to be a part of it. And I wanted to just focus on my healing, my womanhood.
Totally get that.
You know?
But if let me tell you, but if they're requesting you for features, you should really accept them, because right now that means that they're hungry for what you have to say.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's time. You know, recently, you know, people have been talking about Biggie and Lil Wayne and Busta, and how they and J. Cole, how when they do features, they go super, super hard. And they really say some real deep stuff that, you know, you were always listening to hear what they were gonna, you know, drop. Now's the time for you to use those features to drop some stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
This is the time, you know, and that's a space where you can play. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not your own project or anything like that. Because, you know, as artists, we get real deep when we putting our own projects together and stuff, and it takes time, it takes a lot of thought, and you know, it's physical, it's spiritual, it's all of that when we doing our own projects. But when somebody else is doing a project and they just want you to spit on there, it's hard. Do it. Use those moments to say something and show them what you got.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Now, DJ Rhino, what's going on? What's the state of hip hop right now? What's like?
I mean, hip hop is just what she was talking about. Like, you know, where we at with what's going on in the world right now. But John, what I did want to talk to, because you weren't here last week, and I really wanted to speak to you about the Andre 3000, man. Did you hear it?
Yeah.
Did you hear any of it yet?
Yeah, I listened to the whole thing multiple times.
What's your take?
I just heard the one cut, but then
I think,
like, whoa, that's
okay, so
3000.
My take is this, right? This is what happens when Black men are allowed to live. Like if Pac were around, he might be playing the flute right now, right?
That's teaching wisdom.
Black men are allowed, you know, to live past a certain age. Right?
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out how I got to where I'm at.
Well, I mean, because like with Andre, he's just like, yo, I need meditation, right?
Sometimes you need to quiet the words and just.
Well, because he's like,
let the sounds of life be. You know what I mean?
Right. Like he's like Andre 3000. He was like, I've done a lot of things. I've been a lot of places. I made a lot of rhymes, right? But at a certain point, he's like, I'm not feeling what I used to feel because I'm not that same person.
Right.
I'm not a hungry artist having to prove anything.
Right.
I'm older. Right. I'm looking more toward the past lives in the future. He's blessed, right? He counting his blessings. And he's like, I have the luxury and space as a Black man to do what most Black men in the planet cannot do.
That's right.
I can think, meditate, peace. and follow where I want to follow, not worry about like disappointing people, right? Because everybody wanted the Andre 3000 album. When he said he was dropping an album, everybody's like, oh man, and they're going reminiscing. There's all these things that they wanted from him, but he's like, I ain't got that. If you like where I'm at right now, you rocking with me, you like where I'm at right now,
have
cool.
An open mind, baby. That's right.
Sorry, man, but enjoy some, relaxing music, right? So I think every genre needs some soul. And I think that, like, if you can
That's
bring
the word.
Right, every genre needs some soul. And if I'm getting the massage music, that whole like I got to get the cortisone levels down. I got to like deal with the reality of life and white supremacy, racism, and all that other stuff. I think it may be one of the most revolutionary albums ever, simply because he's like, I'm
D asked the question.
Oh yeah, and shirk off those social top-down expectations to just be. This is what it looks for an old black man to be free.
Chuck D asked the question, who stole the soul? We know who stole the damn soul. The question is, how do we steal it back?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you got to feed your soul and go to those places to heal, Boshia, right? To go deep, right? To understand the range of this thing called music, and pull it all in to do and be your best self.
Right.
When you putting your stuff out.
Because it's beautiful, right? Like, you can't say it's bad. It's very well produced.
Not at all.
Right?
Not at all.
Very well produced. Of its genre, I think, like, we've all gotten massages, right? We've all been in those offices that play like meditative type music, or at least you should, right? I think it's a good thing for you. And I'm like, this is like best of a genre, speaks to me. It's soulful, right?
Yeah, I actually would put it on. I would put it on at night so that I can wake up to it in the morning. You know what I'm saying? Because it's really good morning meditation music. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you just need to wake up to just some peaceful sounds, some you know what I mean? Something that not a bunch of words and stuff being hit at you, at one time so early in the morning. As soon as you coming up out of your sleep, you got to have some peaceful vibes. You know what I'm saying? This is it's a good piece for that.
He didn't give us the album that we wanted, but he might have given us the album that we needed. What's the question?
Go ahead, Boshia. Mm-hmm.
You had said something, which I was just talking to a brother, one of my close friends, about. You said this is what happens when Black men are allowed to live, and obviously it touched on what Dr. Is it Dr. Am I saying her name?
Dr. Ife Williams.
Ife.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Ife was saying about proving to be our personhood. So I have a question that is really related to hip hop and what you just said. What does hip hop look like when all Black men in hip hop are allowed to live?
Like everything, because I think that the loss of genius, Pac died. The loss of genius when Biggie died, right? Like the loss of those things. I think with the people who are allowed to survive, they use their now privilege to do interesting things. Some of it's like 50. He has some water. He has power, right? He gets and that's fine. He's making money doing some stuff, but he'll have some really good some other stuff, artist stuff that's a little different, but that's I think is very much to his heart. Like the ABC show about the man who was in prison and became a lawyer, and that that whole thing is like you were allowed to create art that's maybe a little different, right? Maybe 50 is just into that money, but he still does something that are different. I think that especially when you're dealing with the levels of genius that I think come from hip hop and art, just like jazz musicians or or any artist who's allowed to live over a certain time. And I think that I think what hip hop looks like is everything. I think what hip hop looks like is Andre, right? I think people are already trying to sample his music in this album over Rhyme. Right? people putting beats to the lame beats.
That makes sense.
Andre's music
I'm
art
with it.
in order to do that, because it's a wealth of just valuable knowledge. And to some extent, I think this is what we all lose with war, like relating to even the last segment, right? Like, I think war kills genius that can value that can help the world.
Violence kills imagination.
Right. And it kills our future imaginations, right? Like, what is the loss of potential, right? What is the loss of potentiality when like thousands of people are just murdered? What is the loss of potentiality to the world, right? Like I think we so believe that so many people just don't matter and just be exterminated, and people just like, or all these reasons for extermination, that I think we undermine ourselves, right? Because I think that there's so much that will come from unexpected, socially unexpected places. But if you knew about genius and creativity, you should expect it there more than anywhere else. But it's targeted.
Speaking of which, you got a taste for Afrofuturism. Right? What say you about Afrofuturism, right? This is as a talking point. I have to go to Seattle because I missed it when it was in New York. There's a redo of an opera that was developed for Malcolm. Life and
beautiful.
Right? Okay. It was just at the Met. My train betrayed me, so I got there too damn late, and I went to watch half an opera on Malcolm. I wouldn't go do that. So I got to go to Seattle to track it down. But the producer, I'm trying to track the producer down too, Jonathan, because I would love to get him in this space with us, right? Because he was brilliant, and he was the one that started talking about the recapture of imagination through Afrofuturistic art, right? So, I mean, Boshia, that's one of your dimensions, daughter. Talk to us about Afrofuturism as you see it, and as a healing force, as a space of creativity. How do you see this incredible thing called Afrofuturism?
Well, I definitely see it as, and like back to connecting what Jonathan said too, like, it is a free place to create and to develop one's understanding of who they will become. And, Outkast was always about that. Of course, Andre was always about that. I don't like to put them in the same connection, but like Andre has his own vibe. He was always an Afrofuturist. And so like just touching on that point, because when you think about Afrofuturism, it's understanding that we will exist. Don't think about the now and how like, we're suffering, as far as like, yes, pay attention to it and do your best to get justice, but understand that there's no calamity that could take us out unless it was already written, not even of people who hate us so deeply. So you have to plan for the future, the Afro future. And that's obviously in Africa. I just came back from the Gambia, and the vibe there is like how they, like, I literally did like a freestyle, right? And I was just like rapping about the Gambia because it's called the coast that smiles, the African coast that smiles. That's like the name of the smiling coast of Africa, right? And so I was just like doing a freestyle for them or whatever. But they love how African Americans have been able to turn their pain into power. And when I think about how hip hop was always a tool, like it was already written that hip hop would be our way out. And it's all about how we allow things to be tainted from like their purity, right? Like the pureness of hip hop is also it was always a gateway. It was always going to be a gateway into Afrofuturism and empowering Black folks, and connecting the African diaspora to African Americans, because as we understand, like we are part of the African diaspora, but we cannot exclude, because when we start to exclude and be like, no, I'm not that, I'm this, instead of saying I'm all of these things, or this is where my people are from. Like I did a test and I found out my mom was Mending. And I was like, oh, when I went to Gambia, they were speaking Mending. I was like, oh, this seems a lot easier than Olaf. Like, I'm going to actually learn Mending because it seems a lot easier. And so language, right? Hip hop is a language and energy. You could tell who from the South. You could tell who from like Jersey or New York. Like, so I really do believe how Afrofuturism plays that role in how African Americans communicate our tribes and our vibes. Like that is something that we were able to vibrate higher into this other realm of Afrofuturism through hip hop, through the Afro diaspora. Like we were able to do that, and the Schomburg did an amazing like review on that like last year, and well, this year actually in February during Black History Month. I'm pretty sure they're gonna do it again. It was so phenomenal. They had so many guest speakers and just talking about, because it's now a study, like hip hop, they try to study us. They studying us in the school. You get a doctorate for hip hop now. So they trying to figure out what is the phenomenon. It is just God. It is just this divine energy that was always written. It was always meant to be. And the way you understand it is to really make sure you contain it and protect it, right? I say her, hip hop is her. And so when I ask you, what will hip hop look like if Black men are able to live? I think it will look like there's no misogyny. There are queens, there are kings, and we are all flourishing together in this Afrofuturistic, metropolis. Like,
nice. No, I mean that's nice, right? Because and I love I love the way in which you like talked about Afrofuturism. The last the second conversation we had with, or really the conversation before with Dr. Williams, when we were talking about like hope, right? And the answer to the part of the way to deal with and cope with the end of that conversation, which was like, look, they just keep killing us. Like they changed the rules. Like how do you do that? And what I heard from you is that the lens of Afrofuturism is a way to acknowledge reality and still come up with something. Like acknowledge the inevitability of white supremacy now in current reality, and the way that it influences it forms our institutions, the way that it affects our own minds, but at the same time imagine things that are outside of that, because we have to acknowledge that, wait, this may be permanent, but my imagination can see something different.
Africans are already Africans are like, come home, buy this land. What y'all doing? Stop playing.
Right. And I know it's about time for us.
Sorry, Rhino, you was about to say something. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying that's basically what hip hop was. At a time where we're talking about the South Bronx, where the South Bronx itself looked like a war zone.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And we had no programs, no arts programs or music programs or anything like that for ourselves at that point in time. And we created this thing called hip hop. It was about imagination and hope and dreaming for the future. When you listen to those the early rhymes, it was about fantasizing. You know what I'm saying? These were young kids that were fantasizing about living a better life, and having money, and they didn't have it. You know what I'm saying? But they were imagining living a better life. So they were putting hope into their lyrics, and and we've seen over the years how your lyrics can prophesy some things. You know what I'm saying? You put some things in the air and they actually take place. And then look at where hip hop is at right now. You know what I'm saying? And where, as far as where it came from. You know what I'm saying? You look at where it is now, and Nas doing all of these great things, and LL doing all these great things, and all these people doing stuff for pioneers and for the for the people and for the culture. That was all from imagination. And at a bad time in life. You know what I'm saying? And that's what hip hop is.
So, absolutely, man. And that's a great way to end this program tonight. So I want to thank all the guests that we've had on, and hopefully you will come back as well, right? Like, and because we learned a lot today. Today was a really good show. So thank you. X wasn't. I did see X.
Oh, did you? Okay. Why you didn't say nothing?
My girlfriend, who is an opera singer, right?
Really?
Yeah, she's an opera singer. She got me tickets to see. Like she's an actual opera singer. She's really, really good. She has she performs with like orchestras behind her, right? Like
that's what opera is.
And so she was like, "Hey, I know you want to see this," and so she took me to see X, and it was great because the Afrofuturistic elements are amazing, right? Like there's a course that's behind there that's
don't tell everybody. Don't say too much.
Okay, yeah, but you'll see it in the very first. You'll see it in the first few seconds, right? You'll see it in the first, and it's also the story, right? Like it's not a the story of Malcolm X, but they tell it in such a beautiful way, and you see this just from the very beginning, what the Afrofuturistic elements are, and also what the dances are. It's very spiritual. It's very, 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 very spiritual, in that you have the ancestors. You have different ancestors in different parts of it that interact throughout the entire opera, and it's just amazing, right? It's
African is jam fruitful.
Yeah. So shout out to Ashley Renee.
That's the Astro Queen.
Yeah.
Get on and bring on the damn show, man.
That's and that's her artist name as well, because she's an artist.
Bring the Queen on. That'd be an enormous conversation.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so Ed's been trying to get her on as well. So, but this is a good way to end this particular segment. And also, happy birthday, Ashley Renee. Happy birthday! Her birthday's coming up soon, and so
she's a Sag.
Yes. You're about to get me in trouble. Yeah. Sagittarius. Yeah. Fair. All right. So, yep. So, until next week, be careful, be safe. Thank you for coming on. Thank you, Dr. Ife Williams. Thank you, Reverend Tillard, and so for coming on and just adding to our program tonight and adding to our discourse. So, until next week, peace.
And you don't stop.